The wolfish cold grabbed him with a ferocious grip as soon as he breathed in the prickly air. The cold made his bones ache as if his body was being turned inside out, and yet he continued to run, obeying the simplest feeling that first arose on Earth: fear. The fear of death drove him forward through the deep snow. Fear made him forget about his weakness, about his wounds, about the fact that his heart was about to burst in his chest. There was no time to think about what was happening around him. The world had become incredibly narrow, and yet he felt more alive than ever. What whistled past made the fugitive shrink, and then he felt a hive of bees sting him in one spot. Having received another wound on his leg, he could no longer run and collapsed into the stinging, prickly snow. The pursuer's voice could already be heard nearby. He was mocking the fugitive because the chase had been too pathetic. It would have been easier to die on the spot. The hunter was not alone, and he held a long, straight sword in his hand. He knew his prey and brazenly addressed him by name. If only he hadn't made that strange bet in the game that day, the boy thought. That's when everything must have gone wrong. A certain High Lord offered him an unusual way to complete the game, in exchange for the fulfillment of one wish. Never before had the player seen anyone in the game's veteran chat offer such a bet. But the possibility of becoming rich caught his attention, although he initially treated it with a degree of skepticism. He had just completed a game called The Hero's Path, playing as Baekhyun, the very same one whose place he had taken. Even then, the guy was wary that no one in the chat saw this message with the bet offer. The Hero's Journey is a game in which there are gates between worlds, and hordes of monsters constantly come from them. Set in the modern world, players control hunters who fight against these creatures, and the game caused a sensation as soon as it was released. It was a well-thought-out world, with many adventures and unexpected discoveries. With 5 playable characters, the game could be started from different locations and positions. And despite being a single-player game, it quickly became popular. However, this did not last long. Even a year later, not a single player managed to complete the game. With the death of a character, they had to start all over again. Because the game was so fiendishly difficult and constantly humiliated weak and spineless players, only 0.1% of people were able to achieve anything in it. Moreover, only one user in the world managed to complete the game as Baekhyun, because it was even more difficult to play as him. And now this guy was sitting in front of the monitor, thinking about how else to entertain himself. He wasn't particularly concerned about the fact of achievement itself. Due to the game's aggressive difficulty policy, the number of users rapidly dwindled, and now there's only one veteran left in the chat. He already thought that everyone had gone to another chat when the High Lord appeared. He was surprised that there was still someone in the chat, although he thought that he had kicked everyone out. The High Lord ignored all extraneous questions and suddenly proposed a bet. Who doesn't dream of becoming rich and beautiful? The player laughed thoughtfully. But such deals with the devil always had hidden conditions. So he asked, what would happen if he lost? The High Lord asked him if he had completed the game with all the characters. And the guy almost admitted that he had, but changed his mind at the last moment because he didn't want anyone to announce it on social media before he did. So the veteran lied about not having yet completed the game as Baekhyun, and under these circumstances, he accepted the bet. At that very moment, the world before his eyes wobbled. My head was spinning like after a student party, and it became hard to breathe. This is no longer a game. This is reality now. He chose it himself. He read the frightening inscription on the monitor. As soon as he came to his senses, the world seemed to burst into his consciousness with its terrible realism. The guy felt genuine horror and was completely confused. He was completely alone in the snowy forest, without any warm clothes, with no idea where he was or where he should go. A cold, piercing wind ruffled his long hair, which he never had. It soon became clear that he was not alone and that there were other people in the forest. But this did not bode well. They were dressed in strange costumes in the ancient Eastern style, and their leader initially called Baekhyun Lord. Shin Woo-hyun, a seasoned veteran, immediately recognized the character from the game and thought he was just delirious since he saw him in front of him. It was very strange to see a character from a game that looked like a real person, but Shin Woo-hyun immediately confirmed that it was him, his teacher. And today they have a special training session, the teacher said in a soft, ingratiating voice. The veteran read all these words from the monitor screen many times, and the lines and intonation did not change at all. This training promised to be more severe than all the previous ones, Shin Woo-hyun said ominously, all because his older brother wanted him dead. Something whistled past, and the boy felt a blow on his hand. A second later, the pain of the blow overtook him, and he clutched his arm, feeling the warm, sticky liquid that quickly soaked his torn shirt. The blow had been aimed at his heart, but Yu-jun had managed to dodge it. Even though he was physically very weak, the blood of the holy sword still pulsed through his veins. But as long as he lived, he could not be anything other than a disgrace to his clan, the teacher declared, and swung his sword. This death is for his own good, as teacher Shin Hyun promised to do it quickly. This wasn't a dream or a game, the boy quickly realized. Everything was actually happening. Everything was real. There was no time for doubt. If he didn't do anything, he would definitely die. First, he caught his breath and glanced at his wound. It was burning like fire, as if someone had applied a hot coal to it. Now the last words he saw on the monitor, and everything else finally made sense. They were in the scene where Shin Woo-hyun was chasing him, which means he is now Baek Yu-jun. The investigation could be left for later. Now it was important to survive, and the guy concentrated. He had played this game many times, so he had a plan. More than once, he tried to play as this hero, accepting the challenge of the game. The plan was simple: run as fast as he could, which he did, not wanting to become easy prey. He ran until he felt like he was about to spit out his lungs, as if they were being torn apart by a steel brush. The enemies were much stronger and more resilient than Yu-jun, so they quickly caught up with him. For Shin Hyun, it was also akin to a game of catch-up. The teacher maliciously consoled the master, promising to send his servants, including Son Min, to the next world after him, so that he would not be lonely. But while they were talking, the snowstorm suddenly became noticeably stronger, and the tracks that the group of pursuers had followed were almost completely hidden under a new layer of snow. Soon they could no longer see the nearest trees behind the white blanket of snow. But this was exactly what the boy was waiting for. He cursed filthily, mentioning Shin Hyun's mother, and sent him away. Before he could respond to this impudent insult, wolves jumped out into the clearing. Under the cover of a snowstorm, they crept up on the people unnoticed. Cold and hunger forced them to take a risk and attack the man. But Shin Hyun was an experienced swordsman, so he finished off the beast with one swing and then collapsed onto the snow at the same moment. The snowstorm became even stronger, and white flies made the backs of the remaining hunters barely visible. It seemed like they had attracted the ice wolves with their cries, Shin Hyun realized, but he didn't show the slightest sign of concern. But the rest of the pursuers were not doing so well. The ferocious wolves were tearing them to pieces. Such a picture evoked nothing but contempt in the senior warrior. For a man to be afraid of some kind of beast, most of his companions would be useless in the future anyway, and the wolves had to be gotten rid of as well. But first he wanted to finish what he came to this forest for. However, taking advantage of the confusion caused by the appearance of the wolves and the snowstorm, Yu-jun escaped. The fugitive himself was not able to get far. At first he wanted to stop the bleeding and found medicinal herbs under the snow. However, it didn't work right away. And at first he doubted that he remembered the recipe correctly. However, a moment later, a system message appeared and informed him that, despite his inexperience, he had already managed to create a new ointment. As soon as the medicine started working, the wounds began to heal. And in addition, Yu-jun gained resistance to cold. Now he could breathe a sigh of relief. The skills from the game seemed to work here. Playing for other heroes might have been forgotten, but Baek Yu-jun's journey was hardly forgettable, as it took 2 years, and on the other hand, it didn't bode well. Now he was Baek Yu-jun, the junior heir of the Holy Sword clan, whose pavilion was located high in the mountains and looked more like a palace. It was founded by a great warrior nicknamed the God of War for solving the gate problem many years ago. The founder himself disappeared, but his clan continued to thrive thanks to the records he left behind. Baek Yu-jun was 5th in line to inherit this great clan. The hellish difficulty of the game now felt immeasurably terrifying on this side of the process. Thanks to the herbs, the boy saved himself from the cold and blood loss. But the effect was temporary and would last no more than half an hour. Every decision he made now determined his fate. At least he had the hero's path system, and it worked on this side too. Currently, all his stats, strength, agility, stamina, and mana, were at the lowest rank of 6, with no innate talents or skills. In this world, he was a ragamuffin, despite his noble birth. This passage always began with mortal wounds and the threat of freezing to death. It did not forgive the slightest mistake, and the presence of pursuers was also always present. The Ice Wolves would buy some time, but they wouldn't be able to break Shin Woo-hyun himself, especially since he had an artifact in his hands that could track down Yu-jin. He might as well have put a beacon on himself. But the seasoned veteran knew one way out: the Forest of Labyrinths, and headed straight into the lair of death. Meanwhile, his pursuers had already dealt with the Ice Wolves. A pendant lit up on Shin Hyun's chest, and it was this that unmistakably showed them the location of the heir. This time the teacher intended to catch the negligent student, The fact that he had managed to escape twice had already angered the hunter considerably. However, everyone understood that the fugitive was heading into the labyrinth forest, known for its danger. Xinhyun firmly stated that they all had to risk their lives to complete the task. He was overconfident. In order to gain the position and recognition of Yu Tae-ran, he was willing to take this risk. The World of Heroes path is little different from dozens of similar games. There are gates of varying levels, and the monsters that emerge from them, as well as the hunters who fight them. The level of the hunters also varied, as did the difficulty of the tasks. But the Forest of Labyrinths was an area that all hunters avoided. The monsters that lived here were beyond imagination, and meeting them was the last thing anyone would ever experience. This place was hell, and Yujin tried to walk as quietly as possible so as not to inadvertently give himself away. The monsters on this mountain built their own ecosystem. They became new life forms and lived here like ordinary animals. It's obvious that the weakling Baek Yujin will definitely die here without strong security. He wouldn't have ended up here if his teacher Shin Hyun, who had taught him since childhood, hadn't betrayed him, deciding to support his older brothers for the sake of more profitable prospects. When the youngest heir began to cast a shadow over the entire pavilion, they decided to get rid of him. The teacher brought Baek Yujin to the mountain, and this is where the hero's journey begins. The player must survive these dangerous slopes, knowing nothing about its inhabitants. It would have been wise to simply return to the clan, under the protection of his servants, where public assassination is impossible. But instead, the player came to a remote place where he discovered a signpost stone in a clearing. It was a secret place on Mount Sorak that no one knew about, and the stone said that those who lack courage will perish. Those who do not have an icy composure and a broad outlook on the world must leave or perish. The warriors accompanying Xinhyun became worried. Many had entered this labyrinth, but no one had returned, so they understood what awaited them at the top. However, the squad still needed to prove the death of the youngest heir, and they couldn't simply return, especially since Yu Tae-ran had given them an artifact with which they could return without getting lost on the misty slopes of the mountain. There was just one thing that bothered Xinhyun. He didn't understand when Yujun had become so desperately bold. It was as if he had suddenly become a different person. His actions did not resemble a panicked flight, but a well-thought-out retreat, according to an unspoken plan. Xinhyun saw the fugitive moving deeper into the labyrinth and realized he had to hurry. Yujin's tracks were not yet covered by snow. He had passed this path only recently, and because of his wounds, he could not walk quickly, although he managed to stop the bleeding. So Xinhyun led his men on the trail. The plan was simple: catch up, destroy, and make it back before the monsters intercepted them. However, they soon discovered that it was difficult to navigate this forest. It was not for nothing that it was called a labyrinth, and they could no longer figure out where the way back was. Xinhyun impatiently reminded them where they were. One of the warriors didn't immediately understand what he was talking about until she tripped over a root, as she first thought. At that moment, they ran past a body, some poor fellow who had died there, and his body had still not decomposed due to the cold. Such was the Forest of Labyrinths, said their leader. It was impossible to tell for sure whether they were going in circles or on the right path. Many had wandered here dozens of times before they simply ran out of strength. Such was the nature of the labyrinth. Xinhyun ordered his men to remain vigilant and not to fall behind if they did not want to get lost and wander here for eternity. It was difficult for Yujun. He was overcoming pain that he had never felt before. The game never conveyed the feelings that the character actually experienced. It's one thing to sit in a comfortable chair and press a button, sending the hero forward. But it's another thing to do it yourself. Even though the guy knew what to do, he instinctively felt that he could actually die here. The bet the High Lord offered him was truly a deal with the devil. No one warned him about this. However, one thing cannot be taken away. Even though he was deceived, he made this choice himself. There was no one to complain to. Now it was already in the past, and these thoughts could not help in the present. Besides, the guy himself lied about not having yet completed the game for this character, so he trudged along at the limit of his strength and capabilities, stubbornly pushing himself forward through the deep snow. "Well, I found it," the guy said, and sighed with relief. The forest ended in a sharp, rocky cliff, which was the end of the labyrinth. When the guy first came to this place, he fell into despair, because it was a dead end. The rocks were too steep and slippery to descend. He thought he wasted his time, but then he figured out the logic of this level. All that needed to be done now was to maintain utmost concentration. And when the guy turned around, he saw his pursuers behind him. He had slightly overtaken them, and now they were blocking the only visible path of retreat. Xinhyun still looked smug and grinned evilly. He no longer addressed Yujin as Sir. All his resistance turned out to be pointless. After a long run, the student still wandered towards the abyss, Shinhyun said. The boy already knew the answer, but still asked the teacher when he became Taedon's dog and why he did it. Shinhyun chuckled again, amused that Yujin had only just realized the obvious. Taedon's strength matched that of the Holy Sword clan, so he had a better chance of becoming the leader, and so Shinhyun chose his side. It was the winner's choice. This exchange of lines served as another test for the player. Now he was convinced that everything was going exactly according to the script. Once everything became clear, there was no more time to waste, and Yujin took a step towards the abyss. But before he could move, his legs gave out, and the snow beneath him turned red. Because of the cold, he didn't feel how the wounds opened up again. What was more terrible now was not even the cold, but the loss of blood, he realized with horror. Shinhyun snorted again in disdain. He didn't want Yujin to die before he was dealt the final blow. He spoke again of some imaginary mercy, a quick and painless death, and his sword filled with a blue aura. Yujin thanked him for such kindness and stood up again. The artifact on his neck is disposable, the guy suddenly said, which stunned his pursuer. Now they had switched places, and Yujin was mocking his enemy, because he had lured him into a forest from which there was no exit. In a rage, Shinhyun released a wave of chi that quickly cut through the space between them, but the blow whistled past, leaving only a glancing wound. So Yujin took an eagle's leap of faith. He took one last look at the bright sun that blinded his eyes and turned into the darkness. No one could survive a fall from such a height, said one of Shinhyun's warriors. Because of this, they lost the opportunity to prove the target's death, and it was unknown whether Taedon would believe them. But now they had to return in any case. However, when Shinhyun looked at the medallion with the pattern that showed the way, it did not show the necessary signs of work. An uneasy feeling twisted like an octopus in the traitor teacher's stomach, and then he realized that perhaps Yujin was telling the truth. At that very moment, local monsters emerged from the dense forest to feast on the lost travelers. Meanwhile, Yujin did not die as they thought. His fall activated the magic hidden in the narrow rift, and at that very moment he reached the day, remaining completely unharmed. Due to his severe injuries, Yujin could barely move when an artifact, a manuscript sparkling with light and warmth, appeared before him. With his last strength, the guy reached out to her and fell, thinking that he had to recover as quickly as possible. Through the veil of weakness, he saw the system's message. The Book of the God of War recognized as worthy. Only a person with zero talent, just like Yujin himself, could use it. So an unknown force lifted him from the ground when it entered his body. Then, through the blood of the God of War sleeping within him, an awakening occurred, and the entire cave was illuminated with a bright light. The Holy Sword who wrote this book knew that one day a descendant would find it, and during his life he tried to preserve all martial arts techniques in books. Even after his death, this manuscript continued to collect information about new martial arts that were appearing in the world. The ancestor asked to use them for good, peace, friendship, chewing gum, and Yujin, with a freshened face, sincerely promised that he would bring only justice and goodness to the world, and that all his actions would be honest, because he himself decided so. Now that he's received a rich inheritance and you thought there was another path to success, don't think again. The young man has mastered a heavenly physique, which automatically improves thanks to his unique characteristics. All characteristics immediately increase to the 3rd level. Only the heavenly physique, which became a special feature, immediately had the highest rank. Yujin quickly recovered from his wounds. All the main character's cheat magic worked perfectly. There were no normal levels in the hero's journey. Instead, you could increase your strength through hard work, if you know what I mean. And that's no easy task, because grinding is the most boring gameplay in the world. Yujin's path was the most difficult in the game, and everyone knew about its extreme cruelty. But with the main character's cheats, it was all quite passable. It was for this book that the guy took the risk, because such bonuses justified everything and made the passage significantly easier. First, it was necessary to master the heavenly physique, its main feature, which actually increased the speed of learning techniques and reaction speed, as well as power. Not only could you level up quickly with this cheat, but it also allowed you to gain new skills. As if these cheats weren't enough, the Holy Sword book could give him unique skills that no one else could possess, and they could also come up with a win button in the game. This unique ability is extremely powerful, the guy thought. Any skill that existed in the game could be learned, and this applied not only to martial arts. Cleave mountains, rip out soup, defeat everyone with one blow. Cheats conquer everything except boredom and baldness, as we know. Unfortunately, it was impossible to learn magic or alchemy, but there were other ways to get around these restrictions. The first thing the guy decided to do was distribute the points he received from the system. There was no point in acquiring sword techniques now, as it wouldn't give him any significant advantages. But the movement technique was very useful. If you can't win, you can always just run away from a strong opponent. This skill is good both in combat and in avoiding it. Besides, the Book of the God of War strengthened the skill itself, and the guy could do some interesting things. After this, he had to choose one of 3 proposed tasks, although they all had vague and disgusting names. The guy chose what was called "Forgive me, Great Ancestor, let me be a bandit just today," after which a secret passage in the rock opened. This quest opened up a labyrinth-like path, and if you found the exit, early stage rewards would await you at the end. Essentially, this is a reward for finding the tomb of the God of War. After that, everything was simple. Meanwhile, Shin Hyun's squad wasn't doing very well. In fact, they had no business at all, because the terrible monsters had killed everyone. Only Shin Hyun himself remained, hiding in a tree and lurking there like a sparrow. Only from behind was a treacherous whisper of a forked tongue heard, and in a moment, it was all over. But everything was going well for Yujin, and he laid out various mushroom roots in front of him. Now he had all the ingredients he needed, the guy thought, looking at this goodness. Sun root, fire spirit root, and even fire ginseng. After this, he was probably in for an exciting trip to the toilet. All that remains is to open the chest and complete the task. Inside, there were also all sorts of things, a root and some kind of bag. The guy completed the task and received another reward. It seems the whole difficulty of the game was in finding a hidden Easter egg at the initial stage. As soon as the chest was opened, all the items were moved into a bag that replaced the inventory. The hero grinned. He thought he got everything fairly. Hundreds of wuxia novels began exactly the same way. Having put on a black cloak with a dragon on it, he was ready to go back home. This thing also had its own interesting properties, but there is no desire to list all this fraud. The territory of the Holy Sword clan was limited by patrols, where sentries lived who watched the passages even in winter. The guards themselves were amusing themselves out of boredom and hardly paid any attention to the road. So discipline in the clan was questionable. And now the security guard was playing a video game that somehow ended up in the ancient world and didn't notice that someone was standing at the window. At first, he was surprised and scared, but then he recognized the face of Mr. Yoojun, who demanded that his servant Sung-min be brought to him, after which he lost consciousness. His sleep had been going on for 5 days now, and he had frightened all the servants. But the doctor asked them to be patient and wait. His name was Jun-won, and he was the balding doctor of the entire clan. He immediately realized that the reason was not in the heir's wounds. Sun Min was surprised. He asked what else could be keeping his master awake. It was difficult to understand what was happening because the young gentleman had no injuries on his body, although his clothes were stained with blood, and he himself looked as if he had become even healthier than before. Perhaps he was having a nightmare, because when the boy woke up and jumped up abruptly, he screamed in horror. The doctor and the servant were glad to see that he had finally woken up. However, the guy did not immediately understand where he had ended up, although the characters' faces seemed familiar to him. He had so hoped to wake up in his own reality, but now it felt like a dream within a dream. As if wanting to check this, he opened the shutters and looked out the window. On the pavilion's platform, warriors were training, and above everything, the pagoda of the main master towered. Without a doubt, this was still the world of the game. Different masters went about their business to fight against gates of different classes. This is what appeared before the guy's eyes. He stood by the window for a while, hoping that everything would disappear like a delusion. But the Holy Sword clan and its house did not disappear. All his dreams went up in smoke. And he realized that he would have to get out of this abyss on his own. Realizing that he hadn't dreamed it, the guy became despondent and hung his head. Yujin admitted that he had a headache, and the doctor agreed to bring medicine. And Sung-min went to get food. But before that, the master wanted to ask for something else and detained the servant. He needed to find out what day it was, since he had slept for 5. So it was the 15th day of the month. The year is January 2035, said the servant, and a system window appeared in front of Yujin. Of course, all this was not a dream. He just returned home, the guy realized. Later, he ate the good meat with great pleasure and thought about what to do next. Even though Yujin had returned to the clan, this place was hardly safer than the icy wastelands. Still, in this place, many people fight for supremacy using fists. Fights are common here, with children of the main clans vying for power and influence. Yu Taeran, the eldest of the main heirs, was the one who wanted to get rid of his brother. There was no point in expecting kindness from the others either. They once had 3 more children, but they were all killed on the orders of Yuteran, which was part of the usual struggle for power. He got rid of competitors in advance. Some of the children joined Yuteran, while others resisted his will. But Yuteran justified his horrific actions by citing a struggle for inheritance. He already had a strong coalition of other warriors, so going against his will would have been pure suicide. Yuteran sought absolute power over the entire clan, and was the main threat to Yujin. The date matched the one in the game. The guy thought after finishing his meal, in 2 years, Yuteran will become a patriarch. And if their issue is not resolved by that time, Yuteran will do everything to remove the obstacle. To defeat him, it was necessary to close the monstrous gap between them in a very short time. For now, Yuteran had left to close the gate, and he would be gone for 2 months. During this time, it was necessary to become as strong as possible. So the hero immediately got to his feet. Only by becoming stronger could he hope that the clan would recognize him. Yujin stopped at the hall of the great physician, who was one of the great teachers. When he went inside, he saw the master at work, grinding herbs in a mortar. Yujin apologized for disturbing him. He came here to quickly increase his strength, to get doping, in other words, violating all the agreements of sports organizations. And for this, he decided to first become a student of this herbalist, observing his work. At first, the doctor did not understand his request. It seemed so surprising to him. Yujin admitted that he is worried about his current condition. Juwon was a doctor who served the previous head of the clan. He not only loved his work, but also possessed extraordinary talent. The healer did not participate in the struggle for the position of clan leader. He was mostly concerned with collecting herbs and producing medicines, and until now, he did not have an apprentice. Juwon probably could have found a student if he wanted to, but he had his own reasons. The problem was that no one considered herbalism to be a worthy pursuit in a world where strength was everything. As a result, even after many years of living in the clan, Juwon still did not have a successor. However, with his help, Yujin could obtain a cure, a magical elixir that could help him become stronger. This required the skills of a pharmacist. Juwon told the guy that he was busy now. Creating the medicine took him a lot of time. He politely stated that he had become less agile with age, but Yujin did not object. The doctor asked the boy if he was interested in his art, but asked him not to give the old man any extra hope. But Yujin, his eyes shining and full of genuine enthusiasm, declared his intention to study with the herbalist. Yujin had already learned some things from books, he told the doctor, since he couldn't claim to have seen them in the game. By the smell, he quickly identified the names of the herbs the old man was mixing: peace grass, sleepy flower. And judging by the smell, he assumed the potion he was creating could help alleviate emotional pain and restore emotional balance. Apparently, the guy had played on other systems, far into the future, that transmitted sense. In order to gain Juwon's trust, he decided to show him his skills first. And it worked. The old man was very surprised. Then Yujin said that he had obtained and consumed the herbs himself, which is why he remembered the smell. But there was another smell in the potion, that of a screaming herb that was poisonous. Upon hearing this, the master was amazed and agreed with the guy. And he explained that if you burn these herbs and then remove the poison, they help restore energy. For the first time, he looked at the young master with a different gaze, realizing that the talent did not belong to martial arts at all. But at least he can save people, Juwon thought regretfully. The problem was that the young master was the heir to the Holy Sword clan. Yujin had previously told the master how he had fallen into this predicament. According to his version, he had gone for a walk in the forest, gotten lost, and been attacked by monsters. It is obvious that Juwon, who remained neutral, did not even suspect that an attempt had been made on the heir's life. Thanks to this incident, Yujin understood the meaning of medicinal herbs. But the boy immediately complained that he would not be able to study them properly. The trick worked, and Juwon offered to become his student, something he himself really wanted. Then the guy pretended that he hadn't thought about it at all and was genuinely surprised. He did not immediately agree, expressing concern to the doctor, but the doctor said that he was completely free to do so. For the sake of teaching the young master, he was even ready to put aside his personal affairs and experiments. Of course, it would be too late to teach him from the very beginning. And first, Juwon wanted to understand how much his first student knew. Their conversation took the right direction and brought a lot of pleasure and benefit to both of them. Now the system had credited him for his apprenticeship with the healer, and the boy had to demonstrate more skills to gain specialized knowledge. It was something of a test, and Yujin expected to master the skill of preparing oriental medicines in just a few visits. He'd done it hundreds of times in the game, so he was familiar with the basic principles. At least the doctor could be trusted since he was not at all interested in power. Besides this, Sonmin was also indebted to the doctor for healing his family. But the boy himself had no talent for martial arts, so he remained an ordinary servant. These people could be relied upon to never betray him, and that was enough. Yujin then began to think about how to spend his skill points, given as a reward, to get rid of his bony body. The system suggested that he run for 5 hours. Without a doubt, suffering awaited him in the future. He had to pay for his incredible luck. Sunmin was surprised when he heard from his master about training, but Yujin wasn't joking. He actually changed his shoes to ones comfortable for running and told the servant to stay at home. This was quite unexpected because he had not shown any interest in hard training before. But Baekhyujin held on to the memories of his past humiliations, his first self. The Holy Sword Clan is a beast kingdom where the strongest survive, and even if you are a noble heir, you are not exempt from this logic. In fact, you are forced to follow it more than others. Ever since childhood, Yujin was too kind. Not only did he not have strength or talent for martial arts, but he was also a weakling by nature. That's why, from childhood, they looked at him as a piece of trash, and were even more surprised when they noticed the guy on the training ground. Even the newcomers didn't perceive him as a serious fighter and mocked him. Their current attitude was a consequence of the stereotype that had formed around Yujin. If he were the elder, he would have renounced such a negligent heir himself, so as not to cast a shadow on the entire clan. Yujin would have lived an ordinary life, enjoying books somewhere in the wilderness. Thanks to his knowledge as a player, he was able to use the Qigong technique, which made the body lighter while running, and as he thought, it worked. However, running for 5 hours using this technique turned out to be not such an easy task. Even with the bonuses from the system, Yujin's body wasn't impressive in terms of endurance, and his strength was about the same as a sparrow's. But soon, on his last breath, Yujin finally completed his training and took the first step to shed his bony body, earning 50 points. He suffered from dehydration and could barely feel his legs. They were numb from pain and fatigue. However, the result was better than expected. In just one run, he significantly improved his basic performance indicators. Everyone should be like that in life. Then someone made a disdainful comment about his smell, and Yujin's face immediately darkened. Some large-looking clan acolyte had clearly come to mock him, considering this area his own. His name was Yu Kang-ho, and he was Yujin's brother, which meant he was also the heir to the clan. Tall, strong, with a pretty face, the worst brother in the world. His appearance came at a very inopportune time, as Yujin simply wanted to leave. Kang-ho stated that the stench was preventing everyone else from training. This part was also going according to the script, so Yujin expected something like this. He greeted his brother with feigned politeness, as if he hadn't just been insulted. He hadn't appeared on the set for a long time, so Kang-ho couldn't miss such an opportunity to make fun of him. "And why does he need training?" his brother asked mockingly, while Yujin was thinking about what to answer. "No matter how much a weakling trains, he will remain a weakling," Kang-ho declared, behaving like the last arrogant snob. The third son of the Holy Sky Clan, he was a notorious scoundrel, and many rumors circulated about his antics. He spends the clan's funds as he pleases, drinks a lot of illegal drinks, and generally leads an unsportsmanlike lifestyle. As soon as he steps outside the clan's doors, he immediately gets into some kind of trouble. Yujin stuck to his legend and said evasively that he had recently been attacked by a monster, and that was why he had decided to take up training. All because he didn't want to become easy prey in the next res. The brother said that all this was a waste of time and offered to turn to him for help if needed. Despite such a generous offer, as he passed by Yujin, he gave him a very noticeable kick in the face with his knee. Kang-ho chuckled, making it clear that all this was not a coincidence, calling on him to contact him at any time. And it became clear what kind of lessons these would be, in the role of a punching bag. Having sufficiently confirmed his inflated self-esteem, Kang-ho and his friends left, and Yujin promised himself that from that moment on, his brother was dead to him. "I really wanted to answer that way, but I didn't have enough strength for that." The guy wiped the red juice running down his face. Now was not the time to make a statement. "First, you need to become stronger," he repeated for the 5th time in this story. "What is strength, brother?" Yujin had been doing the second stage strength training all night, and now he was studying the treatise. Now he had quite a lot of points that could be invested somewhere. But for the most important skills, he needed to save up a little more. So tomorrow, he was already expecting the right build. He planned to steal this skill from Yoon Song-ha, a first-rank hunter, displaying attributes. The skill itself was inexpensive in terms of points, despite being a rank 1, but it was very mana-hungry when used, but the guy planned to cover this weakness with thousand-year-old ginseng. On the other hand, there were also triple fist and fifth leg techniques, but they were inferior in power to the skill. Having finished thinking, the guy closed the book. He had an important event ahead of him tomorrow, and he grinned maliciously into the void at his brilliant plans. The next morning, he continued working on the steps to get rid of the bony body. At the same time, he demonstrated his amazing knowledge of herbs in order to win the favor of the doctor. The guy knew quite a lot about herbs, their properties and processing methods. For example, some poisonous herbs were dangerous, but after roasting, they were perfectly usable. Ju-won almost burst into tears, realizing that he had been given a very skilled student. For the next 4 days, the guy spent time taking herbs and training his bony body, until finally, his herbalism skill increased to the second level, which increased the rank of the products he created. Ju-won praised him for his success. In just a week, the boy had learned what it would take years to learn, and the doctor attributed it all to talent. Yoo-jun noticed that, just like in the game, others couldn't see his status. But now something else was more important, and the boy thanked the old man for the lesson. He said that he needed help in preparing a certain drug. Ju-won promised to help and asked what kind of medicine it was. Then the boy laid out in front of him the thousand-year-old ginseng that he had received as a reward, and other valuable herbs, which delighted the old man. Ju-won suddenly realized that the monsters had attacked the guy for a reason, as he had told the story. Yoo-jin asked for forgiveness. It was obvious that these events were connected, although the doctor did not know all the stories. But Ju-won himself understood what a treasure the guy had grabbed. So in his place, he would have taken a risk too. Although the doctor had never held a thousand-year-old ginseng in his hands, he had no doubt that it was precisely this, based on the energy emanating from his body. Yoo-jin wanted to make a doping agent from it that no commission could detect. He wanted to create a medicine that would bring his yang energy to its peak and overpower the power of ginseng. So he was ready to eat this root right now. Ju-won nodded in understanding. Now he understood why the boy had trained hard for several days to prepare his body for absorption. Inspired by his plans, the selfless doctor decided to get down to business immediately. Together with his second-tier skill and the help of a healer, the processing effect was strengthened, and they worked until late at night to get everything done. As a result, the most powerful yang energy pill was created. There was ginseng nearby. The two remedies were supposed to balance each other. Ju-won said that he would be there if help was needed. He promised to oversee the entire process. Then, Yoo-jun grabbed the yang pill and swallowed it. It felt like swallowing hot gold. From this burning sensation, he even rose into the air, perhaps on a jet stream from below. The guy's eyes also filled with fire. He groaned as if he was severely constipated. The yang energy was slow to spread evenly throughout the body, so I had to endure it. Once the yang force began to circulate in every cell, Yoo-jun swallowed the ginseng and began to mix the forces. He flew even higher, as if performing an exorcism, and screamed, causing the doctor to worry. Ju-won was already thinking about calling the master for help to stop the process. But at that very moment, the guy applied advanced agricultural technology and began to balance the forces. But this technique was not like those used by the Holy Sword clan. The triple mind technique was sad and pitiful in its essence, but it could teach one to use internal chi energy. At some point, the storm subsided, and the flow of power became calm and harmonious. Ju-won watched the process in amazement because he thought it was impossible. The miracle is that the guy's body accepted ginseng, and he was also able to apply the cultivation technique. Yoo-jun's face smoothed out, and the pain and constipation in his intestines disappeared. Now he went out for a walk and breathed in the fresh night air. Before leaving, Master Ju-won asked him where the guy got the cultivation technique. The guy answered evasively that he had simply repeated someone else's performance. Still, he couldn't reveal his knowledge and talents too much so that it wouldn't cause problems. When he came to the center of the site, he found the place suitable. And again, I called up the status window to assess the changes that had occurred. If you're interested, pause the game and check out this crazy list of cheats. The mana rank immediately jumped to second, and the bonuses from the elixirs also had an effect. Yoo-jin then decided to use the attribute demonstration skill that the sword master had created to put excess mana into the sword, and was something like an aura, merging strength and mana into itself. Yoon San-ha, one of the characters in the hero's path, had a unique ability called Dragon Heart, which gave her an insane amount of mana, so she constantly used attribute demonstration. Now it was Yoo-jun's turn to show what he could do, and he directed all his strength into the stone slab, not caring at all about the hard work of the masons who had to repair the platform after each such demonstration. The impact cracked the tile, but that wasn't the only effect. The entire area within the impact radius was covered in ice. But even one such blow squeezed all the strength out of Yoo-jun. So for now, his leveling up didn't look impressive. However, he didn't expect much from himself. Yoon Song-ha could use this skill constantly because of the dragon's heart. Yoo-jun used it by eating ginseng root. When he rose to his feet, he thought Song-ha was somewhere in the United States. And I decided that it would be great to meet her somewhere in America. In the morning, Sung-min served the master breakfast. He hadn't slept much lately because Yoo-jin had started waking up early. After leaving the bedroom, the guy asked what the clan was doing today. On Sundays, everyone usually did training since it was a day off. As usual, Sung-min declined the offer to join, since the last time he attended a general training session was when he was a child. But the guy suddenly stunned him by saying that he would definitely go this time. "It's a clan member's duty," he said with a smile on his face. This change was extremely striking because as a child, Yoo-jun declared that he never wanted to watch brutal fights again, which enraged the clan leader. But Yoo-jun told them not to argue with him. They only had an hour left to prepare. At the appointed time, accompanied by a servant, he appeared on the site. Noticing him, the other students immediately began to whisper, not hiding their ridicule. In keeping with clan tradition, new students study together every morning, and combat instructors were watching their training. These were ordinary troop reviews, but Yoo-jin considered them useless. The clan leader was also present, but Yoo-jin looked at him very cautiously. Yoo Moo-hak, who sat on the throne with a stern face, as if he had been suffering from constipation for a week. The pressure on the students was serious, and there were other instructors present. Then a girl who was sitting in the place of the senior disciples of the clan approached Yoo-jun and asked how he was feeling after the attack of the monsters. Yoo Jo-yun, the eldest daughter of the Holy Sword clan and his sister, smiled softly at him. The guy thanked her for her help and said that he recovered with the help of Dr. Ju-wan. But then, Kang-ho contemptuously called him a pathetic loser. For a member of the Holy Sword clan to be in danger of death simply because of a monster attack was an unforgivable shame. Yoo-jun really wanted to answer, but decided to hold back as much as possible for now. Next to Kang-ho sat their younger sister, Yoo-min, who remained indifferent to everything. Kang-ho didn't let up, and remembered that recently their younger brother had been frequently visiting the treatment room, which was where he belonged since he had no martial arts skills. Yoo-jin could no longer forgive this, although he intended to behave more gently, but he realized that it was time to move on to the main event. The bastard snorted contemptuously again and told the pathetic scum to come to him after training for a special swordsmanship lesson. And then Yoo-jin resolutely asked his brother to slam the barn shut. It sounded so abrupt and so unexpected that everyone turned to look at the youngest heir in amazement. Then Yoo-jin continued as if nothing had happened and stated that his brother should have taken better care of his oral hygiene after his clubbing days, especially because of his bad smoking habits. Since he has time to run after girls, he should brush his teeth and tongue more often, Yoo-jin added and grinned. Kang-ho was so insolent that he shook with anger, even though he had behaved no less offensively before. But before he could say anything, Yoo-jun had already approached the clan leader to ask him for a favor. He wanted to study martial arts again, and that was his main task now. The clan leader waited for a while before answering, and then asked him what he was doing in this place, where only those interested in martial arts and had talent for them could be. Then Yoo-jun admitted that he had recently developed an interest in martial arts. The leader reminded him of his own words, because Yoo-jun didn't want to learn techniques for killing people. The guy did not deny his words, but after the attack of the monsters, he changed his mind. Such was his legend. Instead of dying without a fight, he wanted to be able to do at least something, for the sake of the struggle for survival. Now, Yoo-jun wanted to study martial arts with one of the 4 masters, but Kang-ho spoke out sharply against this, saying that it was simply ridiculous. Even stray dogs would understand how ridiculous it was. The clan leader agreed with this objection. It would be a waste of time for the masters to teach someone who had neither skills nor talent. And even more so if a combat instructor were to teach him, his brother said harshly. But what if he has talent? Yoo-jun asked, not at all embarrassed by the refusal. Now everything was going exactly according to script, so he was prepared for the head's refusal. Now it was enough to simply prove that he had talent, so that his brother would allow him to train with an instructor. The proof was very simple. He promised that exactly 1 week later, he would defeat his brother Kang-ho in a training duel. Kang-ho made a face as if a swamp frog had just croaked its greatness in front of him. This was too much even for a joke. So the brother immediately became furious, because he didn't think that he would hear such heresy from a brat who was not even a cannon shot away from the world of martial arts. But in this matter, the clan head was the one who decided everything. So Yoo-jin turned to him. He didn't object, but warned that this would be the last chance. Failure meant expulsion from the clan. The stakes were in keeping with the guy's level of challenge and audacity, but he agreed, as he had no intention of losing anyway. Later, Yoojun started preparing. He stood on the platform in front of some pillar. He had only a week to defeat his brother, and if he did, he would be able to study with one of the 4 instructors. The boy pressed his energy against the pole. For a guy with a system, this meant learning a top-notch skill for free. In front of him stood a mana scarecrow. It absorbed a certain amount of the user's mana, although it could not attack or defend itself. With this training, Yoojun hoped to finish off Kangho. The younger students, as always, chatted and laughed at the hero, because they didn't know that he had already turned on the cheater mode. Everyone knew the stories and tales about how Yoojun ran away from his brother in tears many years ago. Meanwhile, the hero himself was practicing the triple fist technique, a basic art that was commonly used by street gangsters. Jabs, elbows, and uppercuts. He then used a qigong technique and quickly approached the target, performing a mana strike. His friend, a student, also observed his efforts, looking at how the boy was beating up the scarecrow, who wasn't fighting back. It had already been 3 days since Yoojun started this training, but he still lacked stamina. And he himself did not perform any special techniques, so his victory looked doubtful. All this time, he ran using qigong, after which he beat up defenseless dummies. But what was even more amazing was that he could use the running technique all day long. No matter how much he jumped, his energy never ran out. It was difficult to understand why the guy was studying fist techniques and not sword techniques. Then, another instructor noticed that Hansong-ah was looking somewhere and asked her about it. He also asked if she had changed her mind, but Hansong-ah's answer remained the same, and she refused. The girl did not want to support young master Yu Tae-ran and wished the best to teacher Kong Mo. Yoojun trained until he broke all the sports equipment, which would have earned an ordinary clan disciple a week of flogging. It's good that these guys don't fight back. The guy liked this type of training. As he expected, there were no visible changes compared to the game. Ginseng gave him the energy he needed. Then someone approached him so quietly that the guy did not hear it and addressed him. He knew this character, Han Song-ah, handed him a handkerchief and asked him how he was feeling. The clan was a rather strict, hierarchical society, like a pyramid. The senior teacher and other instructors placed their bets on one of the heirs, and thus competed with each other for power and influence. Obviously, the more support you have, the more advantages you have, so a real power struggle full of intrigue unfolds here. However, some professionals in their field preferred to remain neutral and just do their jobs, and Han Song-ah was one of them. In fact, she was interested in how he thought he would deal with Kang Ho, since he had been trained by the senior teacher for a long time, so the upcoming fight could also affect his authority. But the guy didn't care. Although he understood Han Song-ah's skepticism, from her point of view, he would still lose. The girl tried to justify herself that Yoojun didn't object. He himself would have asked the same thing in her place. Only a fool would request a sparring match without a reason and a solid basis that he could win. Han Song-ah was again surprised that the guy relied so heavily on fist techniques. She asked out of pure curiosity about martial arts. Ironically, most of the members of the Holy Sword clan showed no interest in the sword, but Han Song-ah was different. She was interested in different approaches to becoming stronger. She didn't hesitate to even use magic. Because of her position as a teacher, she could not admit it right away and was cautious. So now it was clear why she showed such interest in the heir, who decided to use fist fighting. After all, in the Holy Sword clan, it was customary to use a sword. Then Yoojun thoughtfully asked, who decided that there was only one way? In the past, the founder of the God of War clan used fists, spears, bows, and wrestling techniques. Stopping at the sword would be limiting himself. Han Song-ah didn't know what to say right away. And then the guy declared that he had no intention of adhering to stupid restrictions and wanted to use everything that would help him become stronger. Well, you get the idea. Few knew the reasons why the God of War retained knowledge only about the sword. And he also never appeared in person in the game. Han Song-ah nodded in acceptance of this answer. Since the boy was not bound by the restrictions of his mentors, he could think freely. And then the girl teacher offered him her help, although she did not consider herself ideal. This was exactly what Yoojun was waiting for, because he knew about the girl's curiosity. She had to understand that everyone in the clan despised him, and if she took on teaching him, it would affect her too. Han Song-ah didn't care much about such trifles. She herself felt like an outcast in the clan. Since they are both looked down upon, her help will not change anything anyway, the teacher said. Other teachers would have turned him down even if he asked them for help. But Han Song-ah offered her support herself, because she knew very well what he was like, and she didn't care what other people thought. And besides, the girl was a talented teacher. That's why the guy immediately agreed and said that it was a great joy for him. Han Song-ah had the potential to become a magical swordsman, and she was very good at mana manipulation, so it would be useful for her to learn circulation techniques. As soon as the boy agreed to study with her, the girl told him in a chilling voice to stay there. The boy thought that they would start tomorrow, especially since he had already spent the whole day here. But the new teacher told him not to talk like a weakling. He had already forgotten about her character. The girl sternly asked him how he was going to defeat a dangerous opponent with such an attitude. During her training, the sweet girl became a completely different person. In the morning, the training that lasted until midnight continued. Han Song-ah began teaching him a slightly modified clan technique. And first, she needed to inject some mana into his body. As soon as she touched the guy, she immediately realized that the size of his dantian was impressive. And it became clear how he was able to run for so long with the Qigong technique. Moreover, she felt how well balanced the energy was in his body, as if it was given to him by the heavens. Concentrating, Yujun quickly understood how to control energy using her method. As usual, it took many hours and combat experience to fully master this technique, while the young master had stayed away from martial arts all his life. The size of the dantian was also innate, as was the set of characteristics. And Han Song-ah was in no hurry to judge the guy. But then her face took on a surprised look and lit up with the guy's inner energy. The girl was laughed at every time she refused to serve the heirs. She simply didn't see anyone with enough zeal to learn martial arts. Everyone only wanted to strengthen their power. However, what she saw in Yujun made her change her mind. Not all heirs were like this. The guy's technique was perfect. Having seen her only once, he reproduced everything exactly. It was an incomprehensible talent. With such talent, it was time to fight for the place of the head of the clan. Moreover, the guy had interesting views that did not limit the study of martial arts to the old techniques of the clan. He considered such conservatism foolish, and hope appeared in Han Song-ah's mind that with such a clan leader, their foundations could change. She still maintained neutrality, but her help now had another motive. The guy still had a long way to go. In the meantime, he lay on the bed and smiled contentedly at his status. Since he had once again received a free skill, this was a great excuse to laze around. From the very beginning, the entire training was needed to attract the attention of instructor Han Song-ah. The guy specifically talked about topics that interested her, and he was absolutely sure that she would appreciate his great talent. Once all the conditions were met, Han Song-ah imparted 2 skills to him. One of them being the mind-soaring technique. It increased the amount of accumulated mana, which is never a bad thing. In the game, even if all the conditions for this girl's interest were met, without talent, she would never approach him. However, in this incarnation, he has the divine cheats of the god of war, and no one would pass by such a genius. This is how the heir spent his time alone, reveling in his exceptionalism. There was only one day left until that sparring match, but the students looked with concern at the guy who seemed to have decided to exhaust himself before the fight. Under the new teacher's instructions, he was constantly running, and she didn't give him any slack. Everyone noticed that Yujun was really trying and not slacking off like before. What surprised them even more was that Han Song-ah had never been such a strict teacher before. Closer to sunset, she told the guy to get a good rest. What they had done should be enough for tomorrow's fight. With dark circles under his eyes, the boy thanked her for her help. Han Song-ah was surprised that he had gone through all the training these days without a single complaint. And the guy said that it was all thanks to his inspiration. He couldn't have done it on his own. So Yujun asked her to continue to guide him in order to better understand the mind and Qigong techniques that had been passed on to him recently. But did he really have to work on that much, Han Song-ah wondered? After all, the first time she showed him the mind technique, he repeated it exactly. Despite this, the guy claimed that he had no talent. Their training was interrupted by a noise. Kang Ho, apparently tired of waiting for the appointed time, entered the door, knocking hard enough to knock it off its hinges. Apparently, no one in this clan respected the work of ordinary workers. He was terribly angry at Yujun and cursed him filthily. Before he was hit, Yujun asked the teacher not to interfere. Kang Ho grabbed his brother by the shirt and began to shake him, asking why he was making fun of him. The guy pretended that he didn't understand at all what they were talking about. It turns out that all this time, Kang Ho was waiting for his brother to simply refuse sparring and tell his father about it himself. Obviously, because he wouldn't be able to defeat him, defeating his brother wouldn't give Kang Ho anything, since everyone already considered him weak. Then Yujin grabbed his brother's hand, moved it aside, and asked him not to be so nervous. He spoke quite calmly and asked his brother if he was afraid of losing. Since their father had approved this fight, neither of them could refuse it, he declared, not letting go of Kang Ho's hand. That strange, pained expression was once again imprinted on the brother's stupid face, as if he, like his father, suffered from chronic constipation. But in the end, Kang Ho laughed and wished the younger one goodbye. Now he had no doubt about what he had to do with him. The next day, the instructors had already gathered at the pagoda to watch the fight. Even the sisters came to watch the brothers' squabbles. Kang Ho arrived early and was already warming up. He couldn't wait to smear the younger one against the wall. Father was also not there yet. The main teachers of the clan stood next to his place. They all supported Yu Taedan, so they didn't care much about this fight, but clan traditions obliged them to come here. The one Yu Jo-yun wanted to recruit was instructor Ja-yun. It's so cool how all the names are so similar. A little later, Yu Jun himself appeared in the company of his new mentor, Han Song-ah, and this change made everyone look in his direction. After all, this instructor usually maintained his authority, but now two outcasts had gathered together. The guy looked at the sky. It was quite cold. Unfortunately, the clan's walls couldn't hold it back. He looked at his teacher and asked what she thought about it, but the teacher did not answer right away. Although she was worried about him, although she did not think that he would lose, after all, she had seen his training. Kang Ho was known for his brutality. Even if the guy won, he could come out of the fight crippled. She was worried about him as if she had become an official teacher, and Yu Jun noticed this. The girl became embarrassed and immediately cut off the conversation because the head of the clan had arrived. It was time to get ready, and looking at his brother, Yu Jun remembered that since childhood, he loved to wander around different places. One day he ran into a monster there, which seriously injured his right hand. They said it was barely possible to heal it. The boy handed over his fashionable robe to the teacher. It was not just that he remembered this incident. Moreover, I received a task from the system to teach my brother a lesson in order to get 300 points. The clan leader took his place of honor, which meant that the battle could begin. The judge stepped forward and called the participants to the center of the court. In this fight, Yu Jun was going to use thick leather gloves, perhaps borrowed from a biker friend, and Kang Ho held a wooden sword in his hands, and he was terribly angry. But this only played into Yu Jun's hands, since an emotional opponent is easier to control. Biting his lip, he thought about how to quickly deal with his brother. His attitude was not at all suited to a sporting competition, but it was unlikely that anyone in the clan thought about the rules if they allowed doping during training. As soon as the gong sounded, Kang Ho rushed to attack. With the sword technique of soaring into the sky, the fangs of the 5 dragons and vortexes of energy immediately rose up around him. The 5 whirlwinds were a great threat to those who did not practice martial arts. Yu Jun moved slowly. He didn't even try to dodge. And then he swung his hand, bringing his fist behind his back. In the distant past, he tried many options to overcome this moment in the game, and he even completely despaired, not knowing what to do to defeat Kang Ho. I had to come up with everything myself, because there was no one to even ask, no one played for Yu Jun, so he sat at night and went through all the possible options. When suddenly an idea came to him. It was mean, but it could work. The game had a fun mechanic, combining skills. Before the fight, the boy went to bed late, although Sung Min told him to rest. They wished each other good night, and the servant left. Yu Jun himself began to combine his skills, wondering where to start. The first of them, the skill of Earth Explosion and Tyler's Pain, caused a hail of fragments that flew towards the enemy. Kang Ho laughed at the skill, calling it stupid, but was immediately hit by a shard. But the shard was also given the attribute Demonstration skill, so it became covered in ice and sharper than her. And many more such projectiles flew, which forced Kang Ho to go on the defensive and cover himself with his hands. But taking a blow to his face wasn't his best idea. So Yu Jun used the strike skill on him, a jumping kick. As soon as he intercepted the hand in which his brother held the sword, his defeat was already predetermined. Yu Jun took advantage of Kang Ho's old injury and struck him in the elbow area, after which the brother fell to his knees, amazed at the difference in their strength. But he was not yet in complete despair. So Kang Ho tried to attack again. However, this attempt failed because Yu Jun managed to jump to the side using a qigong technique. Now he recalled his brother's words about how fighting him was a disgrace, even though it could have ended in complete defeat. Yet Yu Jun wasn't even a scratch. Grabbing the sword with his left hand, Kang Ho, lisping through his broken mouth, ordered him to shut up. Then Yu Jun asked his brother if he knew why his father turned a blind eye to all his antics. It was all because Kang Ho had a talent for humiliating others. But now, looking at him, It was hard to understand why his father valued his troublemaking son. Despite his wounds, Kang-ho still had some strength left, and he rushed at Yoo-jun again with a moon slash. This blow couldn't be blocked with a bare hand. Otherwise, you could lose a limb. So Kang-ho chuckled. But Yoo-jun filled his fist with mana and met this blow. And he managed to reflect this attack. All the energy of the blade was dissipated. Only the strong survive in the Holy Sword clan. The strong hunt the weak, Yoo-jun said, and jumped into the sky. Now he combined the demonstration of attributes and the strike, once again destroying the site by flattening his brother on it in a thin layer. After Kang-ho went off to count moles, the system reported that the task was completed and gave him another 300 cheat points. As the strong man, Yoo-jun declared that all of his brother's finances, house, and property would now be transferred under his control. Mentor Jaehyun appreciated the boy's rapid growth, as he mastered the enhanced energy of attributes in just 1 week without any guidance. Although she was immediately objected that Han Song-ah helped the guy, she taught him Qigong techniques and Qi circulation. This means that no one taught him about fists and increased energy, although it sounded incredible. Only a genius could do something like this. But even he should have been born with the necessary talent, Jo-yeon thought. The father tried to educate his youngest son from childhood, and perhaps it was not without reason. It seems that the head of the clan made a mistake in abandoning his attempts. Whether this is true or not, the head himself looked tense as always. Yoo-jun was breathing heavily. He had used up all his mana in this fight, and everything could have ended differently. But Han Song-ah praised him for his excellent performance. She actually thought that the guy would at least lose an arm. It was clear from her expression that if he were to ask her to officially follow him now, she would definitely agree. If it were a game, Yoo-jun would take the risk, but the teacher would soon become his official mentor anyway. So he decided not to rush things. Then a servant called him and said that the head of the clan wanted to see him. Apparently, his father offered him to choose an instructor, and the boy said that he would come as soon as he changed. He looked at his brother, who was carried away on a stretcher to the Dr. Ju-won. Now the bully brother's reputation will be ruined, because he was defeated by the weakest heir, and he will be able to take more from him. The clan leader's hall was more reminiscent of an imperial throne room. The boss himself sat on it with his usual stern look, because he couldn't even leave his workplace for a good reason. He had to maintain his reputation. As Yoo-jun thought, his father immediately started by saying that his son wanted to learn martial arts. Only those gifted with talent have the right to study with the pillars of their clan, the leader said. The question was whether he had talent, although the concept itself is quite vague. Yoo-jun was surprised because he thought that he had already proven everything, and the answer was obvious. These words could be considered insolence, so the maid even gasped in horror. But the father appreciated this manifestation of the warrior spirit and acknowledged it. However, he immediately added that not all teachers could teach him. If the senior teacher refuses to accept him, the boy must understand this, because the pillars cannot be under the control of successors. From the very beginning, Yoo-jun knew that he could only choose one of them. Those pillars who had already chosen whom to support in the War of Successors were immediately eliminated, because they were unlikely to accept him as a disciple. To activate the next event, he only had one choice, and that was Jaehyun. The stern instructor looked at him carefully and did not answer at first. Jaehyun was the most experienced of the instructors and had served Yumu-hak for many years, conducting a lot of research to develop the clan's swordsmanship. Instead of the heirs fighting for power, she prefers to train young talents, putting all her efforts into perfecting the art of the sword. And among her students, some managed to become combat instructors, such as Han Song-ae. Without a doubt, this woman had the most influence in the clan when it came to her contribution to the development of fencing and the life of the clan. The head immediately asked the instructor what she thought about this. The other teachers were skeptical about Yoo-jun's wish, because Jaehyun did not take heirs as students, and even Yoo Tae-ran only taught the basics. However, the teacher herself had a different opinion, and stated that she had to check something first. She approached Yoo-jun, and he did not object, as he knew what kind of test would follow. Like an ambitious master who strives for perfection, she wanted to know how good his talent was, and touched his shoulder. And then she pulled her hand back, looking at the guy in amazement, saying only one word: flawlessly. The other pillars didn't immediately understand what she was talking about and asked what she meant. Her physique and inner strength were impeccable, Jaehyun repeated. This surprised the teachers, although the eldest of them maintained a feigned indifference. Then the clan head asked her again what she intended to do. Jaehyun recalled that she had refused all the heirs because she did not want to interfere in the clan's struggle in politics, and the leader respected this decision. However, this time she was ready to go against her principles and agreed to accept the boy as a student. Once the instructor was chosen, the clan leader told everyone except her to leave. But before that, Yoo-jun wanted something else. He had one more request for his father, which he dared to express. The boy wanted to get permission from the clan leader to use the treasury. All the instructors looked closely at the young man, because all his older brothers and sisters had been quite free with the clan's money. However, Yoo-jun was like a disabled child, receiving just enough support to keep from starving to death. If he is now allowed to use the treasury, it means he will be recognized as a full-fledged heir. Yoo-jun used to get by without money. The main thing for him was that no one bothered him. But now, everything has changed. There are too many requests for where to spend money. The father did not object and ordered that all the money be given to Kang Ho, the winner, thus saving him a significant portion of the funds. He forbade Kang Ho from using the treasury until he learned his lesson, but his son still squandered all the money. When the maid protested that this was too cruel, the clan leader gave her a fierce look. So she immediately turned pale and lost the power of speech. She had to be given credit for such loyalty to her master, and perhaps his servants were also accustomed to enjoying Kang Ho's privileges. The clan leader sternly reminded everyone that Kang Ho had long neglected training and lived an idle life. He certainly had talent, which is why he was allowed to behave as he pleased. But after losing the fight so soundly, there was nothing left in which Kang Ho could be better than his younger brother, the leader declared. "This is a clan of the strong. No place for weaklings," he added. And with that, the discussion ended. Already at sunset, the clan leader met with Jaeyeon again and asked her about the condition of the youngest heir. She didn't immediately find what to answer. During her time as an instructor, she had trained hundreds of young men and women, but none of them had the talent of Yoo-jun. Certainly, such talent could be compared to that of the clan leader himself. This change was astonishing because the father had watched his son for many years and had not seen even a spark of such talent. Everyone already knew that Yoo-jun had recently lost consciousness due to a monster attack. There was a possibility that something happened to him at that moment, Jaeyeon said. This was interesting, thought the clan leader, and smiled for the first time. Another variable has appeared in the conflict of successors. Meanwhile, Yoo-jun was busy recovering. He had 2 days to prepare before a new instructor would start training him. The Book of the God of War was updated. At the second rank, it allowed one to learn not only regular skills, but also abilities. Traits are actually talents of the body, such as immunity to poisons or increased chi energy recovery. There were different perks that could be upgraded, and different events would only start if you got these features. There was still a month and a half left before Yu Taeran's return, and once he returned, Yoo-jin would become his target. So he needed to become stronger according to the realities of this world, the god of leveling thought. Before officially entering the clan's society, Yoo-jun decided to first find out everything from his servant. There would be an auction at the Somnium Bar in a week, and Yoo-jun wanted to know what kind of goods would be there. Journey of Heroes was a game where the story and environment changed every turn. Even if you followed the same path, things like the enemy base could appear in a different location. This meant that even the smallest actions could cause a butterfly effect. Since Yoo-jun was a playable character, it was safer to send Sung-min on small errands, especially since he didn't have any free time due to his training. When Yoo-jun saw the treasury available to him, he was stunned. Even the Imperial Treasury would have envied such an amount of gold. Then they handed him the Black Clan card. Even though they lived on a mountain in the wilderness, far from civilization, their wealth was not a trifle, considering the clan sold everything they got from the gate. And so it suddenly became clear that this was not the world of wuxia, but a modern world in which people who are hunters live like monks in the mountains. Yoo-jun chuckled because he asked his servant to bring this map, and it was Han Sung-ah who brought it, which meant that from that day on, she was his official teacher. This meant that the girl would teach him alone, although the duties were more reminiscent of a secretary. She was one of the most talented mentors, and Yoo-jun needed her. So he said with a smile on his face that it was an honor for him. Later, the boy took up his books again while shaggy snow fell outside the window. At first, he thought he could gain a couple of abilities by focusing on training. One of them was the Stimulator, a feature that allowed one to withstand large, long-term loads and quickly restore energy. Third Wound. It cost 300 points. Weaker than other abilities and expensive, but since the guy no longer received the effect of the 1,000-year-old ginseng, it would be useful to him. Ginseng gave him the ability to train day and night, but he couldn't rely on doping forever. Having decided on the feature, Yoo-jun decided to choose the skill at the same time. There were 2 ways to gain skills on the hero's journey. The first was training. Second, get skill books, where all the necessary information is stored. Only reading them grants a skill. The problem is that such books are rare, especially the high-ranking ones, which is exactly what Yoo-jun needed. This is why training became a more popular and reliable method. Getting a skill book is only possible with great luck. But the guy already had the God of War's book, which could be used at any time. Besides, now he could receive any training from the clan, and this opportunity was also extremely useful. When he arrived at the site, Jaeyeon greeted the young master. They started their training on the right foot, with a cup of tea and some cookies. The guy didn't mind tea, although he was more used to coffee. Jaeyeon took her time and asked him what kind of martial arts he wanted to learn from her, after which she looked closely at the guy with a penetrating gaze. Yoo-jun decided to learn hand-to-hand combat techniques first, which surprised Jaeyeon. Usually, all the clan's heirs preferred sword techniques. The summoning sword technique was the clan's symbol, and all heirs sought to learn it, as it was powerful in itself and mastery could make it even stronger. The guy clearly had to understand what clan he was in to ask for such a thing, and how his request sounded. But Yoo-jun stated that he did not intend to give up the way of the sword completely. He wanted to learn all the martial arts techniques, and the fist technique was just the beginning, just like the God of War did. The young heir intended to use all means, and he heard that Jaeyeon was researching the martial arts of the God of War. So he decided that this could be useful to him, the guy said, and looked at the mentor. She was surprised to realize that he was speaking as if he was sure that she knew these arts. But in the end, she agreed to teach him. Jaeyeon knew the fist technique that she learned while traveling the world. The problem, however, was that she didn't find the technology itself, but only a fragmentary note about it, a drawing of a key. This meant she was still not perfect, the mentor stated. She honestly admitted that if the guy wanted to become stronger, it would be better to learn sword techniques rather than fist art. However, the guy did not change his mind and firmly asked to be taught fists. Then the mentor accepted his decision, and they went to the training ground. There were many talented guys among her students, and Yoo-jun realized that the teacher was truly good at her job. To begin with, she wanted to teach him 2 movements. For fist technique, it was like nothing. The technology was not perfect, and much of it was irretrievably lost. By placing her hand on the pole, Jaeyeon immediately charged several puppets with energy. The other students also perked up, since it wasn't often that the teacher showed something on her own. At that moment, Yoo-jun received a message from the system. The task was to dispel the doubts among the students and exactly repeat Jaeyeon's movements. When the puppets were ready, the teacher said that she would begin. This technique was called the Destroyer of the Heavens. As soon as she stamped her foot, the air around her began to move. With the second movement, the wind increased and the currents acquired a green tint and a strange smell. Gathering all this strength into her fist, Jaeyeon struck one of the puppets. For a moment, the energy took the form of a dragon, after which a terrifying explosion followed, once again destroying not only the wooden mannequin, but also the tile. Yoo-jun chuckled contentedly and seemed to overhear the masons sighing heavily. The Sky Destroyer lived up to its name. This technique consumed a huge amount of mana. A person with a normal-sized dantian shouldn't even try to learn it, the mentor explained. Of course, Yoo-jun understood this. Then she said that she would show him the second movement. But before the demonstration, she wanted to show something else and approached the second mannequin. It turns out that the puppets could be provoked into a counterattack, forced to shoot mana at themselves. Jaeyeon showed how to do it and poured mana into one of the dummies. The bullet flew quickly towards the boy as soon as the mentor touched the piece of wood. Yoo-jun deflected it with a slight movement of his hand. His reaction was good. The attack wasn't strong enough to knock her down, but it did burn his hand. This surprised the guy a lot, because in the game, this thing didn't shoot straight at the target. This demonstration was needed to lead to the second movement. Jaeyeon now stood in front of the mannequin and waited for it to shoot at her. This time, she surrounded herself with green energy, and all the shots hit the shield. After which, the teacher gathered this power in her hand and threw it like a baseball. The throw hit the target, and the teacher scored a strike, greatly surprising all the other students. It seemed that the second move was a long-range attack. This technique was called a return attack. It was quite accurate, although not as destructive as the first. Only people with good mana control could perform this, Yoo-jun realized. The skill was very useful and could come in handy in various situations. Jaeyeon had never used the second move in combat, but she figured it was a very useful art against mages. Then the heir stepped forward and said that he wanted to repeat these movements. Jaeyeon was very surprised because she didn't expect such self-confidence. The students watched everything that was happening intently, although they could not hear their conversation. They already knew that the young master had asked to be trained, although they considered him a weakling even after defeating Kang Ho. Many preferred to see the heir's achievements with their own eyes rather than believe rumors. Jaeyeon touched the mannequin with her hand, charging it with mana, and she asked the guy if he wanted to start with the second movement. But Yoo-jun replied that he would start with the first. This made the mentor think, because the guy claimed that he could repeat after her just having seen the technique once. Moreover, the other students watched him closely, not hiding their attitude. In case of failure, the heir would again become a target for ridicule. After taking 3 deep breaths, the guy said he was completely ready. Usually, to learn a new skill, you had to practice or get a book. Just 2 options to choose from. After this, the student underwent training, either on his own or with a mentor. Hard training was inevitable in any case, but this did not apply to the god of cheaters, because he had an artifact from the clan's founder himself. As soon as the dummies shot mana at him, he immediately called down fire. Everyone saw how his fiery energy surrounded his body and repelled the attack of the mannequins. This was the second move in which Yujun absorbed the opponent's attack. Now he could gather all his strength for a strike, just like Jaehyun did in the first technique. When the air hit the dummies, he caused a fire tornado that nearly burned down the neighboring barn. The explosion was so powerful that a couple of sheds were sure to burn down. As soon as the head of the burnt mannequin rolled towards the students, they immediately fell silent. Even Jaehyun couldn't believe her eyes. It had taken her years to learn this technique. And here, someone who had never practiced martial arts repeated the technique the first time and improved it. Yujun completed the system's task and received points. He also earned praise from the teacher. She didn't think that the absorbed mana could be used to destroy the heavens. The guy smiled modestly and asked not to overpraise him. He simply understood that he didn't have much mana and needed to take it from another source. But even so, the degree of destruction of the tile wasn't as high as after Jaehyun's strike. His Skybreaker is definitely loud, but not that destructive. The mentor admitted that as soon as she saw him fight, she already realized that he was incredibly talented. In all her years of study, she had never met anyone more talented than him, and it was unlikely that she would meet anyone in the future. Now she doubted that she would be able to teach the young heir anything at all. As soon as Jaehyun said these words, Yujun received a new task called the Successor of the God of War. And in order to complete it, he needed to continue following the instructions. The reward was the Ghost Steps skill, which was used quite often, but Yujun was planning to just buy it anyway. But there was a catch to the task. Despite her doubts, Jaehyun still wanted to teach the boy, and she ominously suggested that I try out the Ghostly Steps skill on myself, which meant starting training at a catastrophic level of difficulty. Yujun had been working hard all week and was now completely exhausted. The teacher stood over him and praised him for his work, despite the fact that the boy refused to continue. In just a week, he's made a lot of progress, she said. Yujun modestly noted that everything was not so, and he was still far from her level. But these words meant that he was somehow comparing himself with the senior instructor. Dr. Juwon came to see his progress, accompanied by Han Song-ah. It was strange to see them next to the young heir, so Jaehyun was surprised. The doctor brought him a remedy for a quick recovery, and they exchanged the usual pleasantries. Han Song-ah also greeted her mentor, who asked what brought them here. Then the guy told Jaehyun that her student was now also his mentor. And this again caused the senior mentor to let out a cry of astonishment. Jaehyun immediately remembered that her student had promised to remain neutral. The embarrassed girl stated that her opinion on this matter had not changed. And then the teacher apologized for being rude. She just wanted to tease her. Just in case, the girl justified herself by saying that she had not changed her decision rashly. Jaehyun had no doubt about it and knew that her student had weighed everything carefully. This was the end of Jaehyun's lesson, she informed the young heir, and then she herself started talking about Ran. Everyone knew that he would return in a month, and without a doubt, Yujun was going to claim the place of the clan head. It was too late to turn back. His older brothers and sisters would not leave the boy alone until he showed his teeth. Although Yujun could join the faction, like Kang Ho, but the proud cheater, of course, couldn't do that and grinned at these words. Jaehyun also realized this and said that she was wrong to doubt his decisions. If the other heirs had been alive, it would have been harder for him, the mentor added as he stood up. And again she warned him to be careful with Ran and Joyeon. Both of them were worthy of the place of the clan head and were ready to do anything for their goal. The guy was aware of this much better than anyone else. And after these words, he thanked the mentor for her concern. When they separated, the guy thought about his already dead brothers and sisters. It was claimed that they died in an accident. But what united them both was that they declared their desire to become the next head of the clan. And then Ran dealt with them, and the tragedy was hushed up. They even tried to kill Yujun, although he was weak. And after his demonstration of strength, even more so. Then the heir returned to his chambers and found there some fat man who looked like Son Min. Yujun remembered that something similar had happened in the game before. He barely recognized his servant, but Han Song-ah did not recognize him. So she stood in front of the master, grabbing the sword. She was determined to kill the unfortunate man immediately, deciding that he was an enemy spy. The guy hastened to reassure her, since he didn't have any spare servants at the moment. Then the girl looked closely at the chubby guy again, not believing his words. And only then did I realize my mistake, greatly surprised. Afterwards, they sat down to drink tea and macaroons, and the reason for Sungmin's changes became clear. With the replenishment of the treasury, more delicacies appeared in the house that were not there before. The fat man was offended and said that what raised more questions was the fact that the teacher had never eaten these cookies before. The girl indignantly justified herself by saying that she had spent her entire life in the clan. It made sense because Han Song-ah was an orphan and she really did live here, Yoo-jun remembered. Here, Sungmin stated that he had already studied the Somnium auction, and apparently the carcass of a rare animal would be put up for auction. The servant also obtained an invitation for his master, taking 2 just in case. Then the heir thanked him for his service and said that he would use both. Although the Holy Sword clan lived in the mountains, they also had their own headquarters in Seoul, where they occupied an entire skyscraper. The younger gentleman's arrival had already been announced, and the branch manager had promised to prepare everything. While Yoo-jun was walking with Han Song-ah, everyone was staring at them, and the girl became embarrassed. Then the heir explained to her that her outfit was to blame. She was on guard the whole time, but the guy told her to relax, as it would only attract more attention. It was clear she wasn't used to being in public, so it was not easy for the teacher. But the boy, on the contrary, felt confident. The last time Han Song-ah was in this city was when she first became an instructor. Then she came here to re-register as a hunter, just to update her information. The heir thought about her words and looked away. The building of the hunting association was very close, another tall skyscraper. Then the heir thought again, remembering everything he knew about them. In the game world, monsters began to appear hundreds of years ago and come out of the gates. Those who were called hunters gathered in squads to confront the monsters, and thus managed to hold back their onslaught. The groups created then turned into guilds and magic towers, or became clans, like the Holy Sword. All this lasted because the hunters were hungry for money and glory, and they were well paid for the risk. But eventually, some gained so much influence that they even penetrated the government. Han Song-ah read the guy's mind and said that he shouldn't worry about certification like other hunters. The guy thoughtfully agreed with her. Who knows how the organization will change when someone like Han Jung-woo joins it? Later, they reached the auction house and, showing their invitations, went inside. It was quite lively inside. There were a lot of tables of people. The place looked more like a bar. Beautiful women, alcohol, and dim lighting created their own atmosphere. Han Song-ah stared around in amazement. She didn't think that there could be such a vast place underground. There was plenty of good food and hunters around, so she liked the place. They were all gathered here for the auction that was about to begin. The mentor asked him what kind of auction this was. The guy suggested going up to the second floor first, where the view was better. When they reached the top, the presenter took the microphone and began the broadcast. Rare items were sold here, not only from their world, but also from others. These rarities could only be obtained from special alien monsters. The first lot was a first-rank item from the Dark region. Many have already realized that this is nothing more than a book of skills, and one related to magic. It was obtained from another world, the Kingdom of Leborn, on the continent of fantasy, and immediately attracted the interest of the heir. The price started at 100 million credits, and Han Song-ah's eyes lit up. And this was not surprising because she has a talent for magic, so it was not for nothing that she was interested in such things. The book definitely had a rank 1 feature, but the guy couldn't remember its name, and it was annoying. The price of the lot kept rising and had already reached 200 million. Then he realized that it was time. Here, participant number 18 raised his hand and bet immediately up to 1 billion. Obviously, he was not buying with his own money, or was simply a fool. He was a strange man with a fish-like face and a smug look. Yoo-jun was waiting for his appearance, so he grinned. The auction is almost over. Only 1 lot remains, the host announced. And this was exactly what everyone was waiting for. The main lot of the auction. Hailing from Mount Sorak, the same mountain where the Holy Sword clan was located, it was the rarest creature of all. The host pulled back the veil, and a huge snow tiger appeared on the stage. Even in death, he still radiated tremendous power. Han Song-ah also felt a huge amount of mana inside her. He'd only recently been brought here, so it seemed like the tiger was still alive, just sleeping. He had been properly treated, because his heart, which served as a source of mana, was fine. All hunters who understood the value of this lot immediately wanted to know its price. But number 18 showed no participation. The starting bid for the lot is only 1 billion credits, the presenter said, and the price instantly rose to 2. No one was stingy with the money here. After all, it was a snow tiger, so it was no wonder that other hunters were bidding for it like crazy, Yujun realized. The skin, heart, claws could all bring a lot of benefit to those who knew how to process them. That's why the heir himself made a bid and raised the price threefold to 6 billion. It was easy for him to bargain, since it was the clan's money. Even Han Song-ah, knowing about the clan's wealth, didn't expect this. She immediately told me to be careful with my purchases. The head could have been furious that such a sum was spent in one go, but Yujun told her not to worry, saying that it was only a small amount of money. They did have some resources, but for the clan they were insignificant, and the father certainly wouldn't be against it, but the mentor never understood what was the source of such self-confidence. But even such a jump in pricing did not stop the hunters, and the bidding continued. As soon as Han Song-ah mentioned careful handling of funds, the guy raised the bet to 10 billion. This completely knocked her out and left her speechless. The auctioneers were the most delighted, as they received a substantial percentage of the sales. Now, number 18, who had been confidently throwing money around until then, was getting nervous. He could still call the bet, but he was afraid that the unknown participant would raise it by a large margin. Moreover, his opponent looked like a spoiled dandy from a rich family. Who he was and how rich he was, number 18 had no information about him. Despite this, he decided to go all the way and accepted the bet, raising it by a small amount. Then, rejecting all of his mentor's warnings, Yujun immediately set a new level of 15 billion. It was simply unthinkable. But the 18th answered again, with a slight increase. But before he could take it back, the price jumped to 20 billion. It was impossible to compete with someone who could throw away 20 billion in just a second. It was clear that this guy was insanely rich. In the end, Yujun won because the fish-headed opponent was unable to accept the bet. This lot was the last one, so the auction ended. Thanks to the inventory bag, the tiger's huge body fit inside without any problem, and the heir and mentor began to return home to the clan. As they walked late at night, Yujin asked her if she knew what it meant to be a straggler. She definitely should have known about the magic towers, the heir continued to speak. The strongest association of mages in the world was at the level of the Holy Sword clan. To succeed in the tower, one had to overcome numerous obstacles. The requirements were simply off the charts, and the intensity of preparation could rival that of the Holy Sword clan. That's why those who fell away during the process created their own organization and called themselves stragglers. People called them mercenary magicians, but Yujun didn't agree with this. It would be more correct to consider them a criminal organization, he said gloomily. They go crazy when they see an object that is even slightly related to magic. And at that very moment, a crowd of threatening appearance stands in their way. Number 18. With a fish head and a creepy face, as if his chin had been pinched by a snake, ordered them to put the tiger's body on the ground. Although the person they wanted to rob looked like a boy from a wealthy family, the criminals hoped to do everything quickly and avoid punishment. The richer the better for them, said the fish-headed man, and cast a spell of silence. Han Song-ah also became angry and asked them in a chilling voice if they realized who they were dealing with. But the leader of the robbers simply ordered them to be captured, and the air immediately smelled of thunder when the magic rings appeared. The mages fired a simultaneous volley of dozens of spells. Apparently, this was their main tactic, to suppress with brute force. But with the help of the return attack technique, Yujun absorbed all the damage and blocked their attacks. Seeing that all their efforts were useless, the group of second-rate magicians became confused. They tried again, but by this time, Yujun had already disappeared from his place. Thanks to the ghostly step technique he received from Jayan, he instantly appeared next to his opponent, after which he began to return to them the power he had borrowed from them. Although the guy only hit one villain, the ground became covered with ice under the feet of everyone else, slowing them down. The leader of the losers suddenly realized that this time he had overestimated his capabilities. Never before had he seen such a strange skill, and since they had no chance of winning, his scoundrel instincts immediately told him that it was time for a tactical retreat. He was the first to volunteer to go to the base for help, thus coming up with a plausible excuse for himself. But the others did not support this idea, because it was possible to call for help right from this place. But the madman with the fish head had already fled, not listening to the curses of his accomplices. The rest could not move because of the ice, and waited in horror to see what would happen next. Seeing that the leader had escaped, Yujin asked the teacher to look after the small fish. As soon as she nodded, the guy flew into the sky, using a skill he had just recently learned, and she noted with envy that she uses it like a professional. This guy was a genius. It was amazing that no one noticed it. Moreover, He knew about an organization for the underachievers that she herself had never heard of. The losers tried to reach the swordswoman with spells, even though their legs were frozen. They could still cast spells. But the fireball that was fired at the swordswoman was immediately cut in half. And then the guys realized how much they had made a mistake in this life. Only then did it dawn on them that this girl belonged to the well-known Holy Sword clan, but it was already too late. She walked towards them like an avenging angel and asked them to blame everything on their stupidity and greed. Meanwhile, the fish-headed man threw down the book with the magic skill and ran on. It is not clear whether he lost it or it was a trick. But thanks to this gift, Yoojun found out where the lair of the villains and losers was. In each chapter, the location of this base changed, so it was only possible to track them down by provoking them, especially since there was more than one base. The renegade mages had extensive connections. However, for the matter at hand, the guy decided it didn't matter at all. Indeed, at that very moment, people in suits appeared next to him and fell to their knees. They were all managers of the local branch and came to his call. Yoojin asked if they saw who entered the building. According to the manager, there were supposed to be no civilians inside. Then the heir ordered to get rid of everyone, except for the one who had just run inside. As soon as they received the order, they immediately disappeared. Yoojin looked after them thoughtfully. In fact, he hadn't called these people. They were with him the entire time he was in the city. They just kept their distance. The boy had no doubt that it was his father who ordered him to watch his every step. This was the advantage of playing as Yoojun, despite his huge starting difficulty. Who doesn't like absolute power, the guy thought, looking at the rain from the broken windows. Inside, all the criminals somehow quickly disappeared. The wounded leader of the magicians was breathing heavily and asked them in horror who they were. Yoojun walked inside when all the noise died down. "They are the Holy Sword clan," he said confidently as he stepped out of the shadows. But instead of being horrified, the fish-headed man merely snorted and said that the clan should have continued to sit on its mountain. True, with a knee to the face, they quickly explained to him that this should not have been said. Somewhere off camera, the capital's dentist rejoiced when the fish-headed man was lifted from the floor. Thus, he was taught a lesson in politeness and warned that the matter would not end with a simple remark. As Yoojun had ordered, this scoundrel was the last one. The clan servants reported to him. Then he ordered the scoundrel to be tied up and taken to the third basement floor, which surprised the servants. They thought they had already cleared the entire building as they were ordered. However, there was a hidden treasure trove of magical items located here. The servant apologized for his inattention and promised to be more careful next time. It was astonishing that the young master knew about this place, and the servant assumed that it was a spy. The manager had heard rumors about changes in the young heir, and he really was different from his former self. After searching for a bit, the guy picked up some kind of sheet of paper and said that this was what he needed. Magic Training Circle, an item used to practice mana control. For its rank, it had very weak indicators, but it could be used by many people at once, and the heir had no doubt that he would find a worthy use for it. As soon as he took everything he wanted, he ordered everything else to be delivered to the clan, along with the captured magician. The people from the Magic Tower were supposed to visit the Holy Sword clan soon, and this prisoner would be a surprise for them, the heir said. Such business and political insight impressed the manager even more. The Magic Tower had long been pursuing stragglers who tarnished its reputation. Although the prisoner knew little, his mere presence was a good sign of good relations. The young master had clearly taken into account the clan's external connections, and this was completely different from the rumors that were circulating about him. The very fact that the clan had warned its branch of Yoojin's arrival indicated that they had recognized him as the heir. The next morning, Yoojin called teacher Han Song-ah to his place. The guy put the loot in order, and now he had a lot of different books in the library. Since he had already read them, he wanted to get rid of them. But what was more important now was that he had a gift for the teacher. That very book of magical skills. Yoojun did not forget her interest in this book and decided to make a nice gesture. At first, Han Song-ah was embarrassed to accept such an expensive item, but the guy insisted, saying that the book was useless to him anyway. When she again politely refused, the guy advised her to first remove the satisfied expression from her face. She was clearly happy, and the heir warned that he would burn the book if the girl refused again. Since the gift was a success, he decided to continue and got to the main point. A scroll with a training technique appeared in his hand, and the guy pretended that he didn't know how to use it. He feigned complete bewilderment, hoping to pique Han Song-ah's curiosity. The girl immediately explained that he was holding a magic circle in his hands. The teacher explained that this was not a skill book, but something like a consumable artifact. To use it, you had to install it in the right place and pour mana into the circle. As soon as the girl did this at his request, a magic circle was imprinted on the floor. Of course, Yoojun already knew everything, but this thing consumed too much mana. And it's not surprising that after using it, Han Sung-ah looked like a squeezed lemon. But it could be used several times. It was a circle for training mana control. And Yoo-jun allowed the teacher to use it when he was not here. The teacher agreed, and they decided to test it right away. But then, someone entered the room. It was the servant, Sung-min. He assessed the changes in the situation and reported that guests from the Magic Tower would soon arrive. This was much earlier than the heir had expected, and most likely such haste was connected with checking the magic circle of transportation. His ex-fiancée was also supposed to arrive here, Sung-min added. At first, the guy didn't pay any attention to it, but then he started thinking about it. While the servant was chatting about how he hadn't seen his mistress for a long time, the guy's face grew increasingly gloomy. Young Mrs. Jin So-yeon was about to arrive here soon, and terrible thoughts flashed through her head. Here the guy was overwhelmed by flashbacks of Vietnam. The acrid smell of napalm, the noise of helicopter blades, the march of the Valkyries. The wounded Yoo-jun shouted at her to stop. It wouldn't change anything anyway. But she didn't listen to him, creating the largest magic circle he had ever seen. Long silver hair fluttered in the air, which was electrified, as if during a thunderstorm. "What madness!" Yoo-jun blurted out, and cursed the balance of this game. After that, the entire city disappeared from the face of the earth. Along with his character, the game ended in the same place for the umpteenth time. So Yeon, along with Han Sang-woo, is the main protagonist of this game, and the next leader of the Magic Tower. This girl is a walking Armageddon. She was born with excellent rank characteristics, and if the collapse of the Magic Tower cannot be prevented, she will enter berserk mode. That is, he will completely go crazy, possessing the power to wipe the entire country into dust. And here she was, his ex-fiancée. Some events and features changed randomly in each playthrough, and they were also connected to previous playthroughs, but Yoo-jun didn't know all the details. Perhaps the game had some hidden mechanics. In any case, their connection with So-yeon came as a surprise to him. If it were a game, he wouldn't be so worried. He could always start over. But now he was playing on Iron Man difficulty. It's reality. And there will be no rebirth after death. At least, the guy didn't think to check it. He lived Yoo-jun's life, and when he was assassinated, it was part of the unchanging plot. As confirmation, all the secret bonuses for which he had risked himself were still in place, and the guy survived. However, there were still variables that Yoo-jun didn't know about. Perhaps they only appeared now. Sun-min saw the worry on the gentleman's face and asked what was wrong, but the guy simply waved it off. Now was not the time to think about it. The meeting with the Magic Tower was expected tomorrow, but now it was necessary to rest and prepare for it. That night, Yoo-jun still started practicing in the magic circle, practicing the heart method of heaven destruction. At the same time, he decided to figure out what was happening for now. Firstly, there were unknown variables, in addition to which he had a relationship with So-yeon, which was unknown. The guy didn't have any precise information to rely on, and he felt unsure, as if he had entered a quagmire, wondering if it was possible to return back. What was happening to his real body now? But he believed that once he completed the passage for Baek Yoo-jun, he would be able to return to his body, so he was determined to survive. "This is the best thing that could be done now," said the guy, throwing on a black robe. The delegation from the Magic Tower was met by Jo-yeon's elder sister. She was constantly yawning and wanted to leave. But because her father locked himself in the training center, she was appointed as the main one in his absence. Father allowed Jo-yeon to receive guests as she saw fit. They also knew that the delegation of magicians would include the famous sorceress So-yeon, who had some unknown need for their lonely mountain. No matter how much they thought about it, they still couldn't understand why the tower's legacy chose this place. And then, a teleportation circle appeared on the ground. Then Yoo-jun himself came to the clearing, surprised that his sister had arrived so early. She wasn't very happy to see him. From being a sweet little brother, Yoo-jun had recently started to act very strangely. It did not escape her notice that now Master Han Song-ah, his constant mentor, and the teacher bowed politely. Jo-yeon herself asked her to teach her, but she refused. And now it turned out that she changed her mind in favor of her brother. Yoo-jun answered for her, saying that sometimes people's opinions change, and he is simply better than his sister. These words, thrown out with a challenge, made Do-yeon frown. However, the sister knew how to control herself, and after a pause, she softened, saying that now was not the time for this. And indeed, the circle had already been activated, meaning the guests were on their way. Yoo-jun decided that there was no need to be nervous and kept his composure. He just had to do everything the same way as in the game. As soon as the light of the circle went out, several people appeared in it, led by a silver-haired girl. While she instructed her people to check the return circle, she herself went to the meeting. The last time Soyeon met Yu Jung was at a conference last year, so it had been a long time since they had seen each other. But they were on good terms. They greeted each other like good friends. But when Yoo-jun approached, the conversation died down, and So-yeon stared at him. She quickly approached him, and the guy, not knowing what to do, became slightly embarrassed. He also greeted her with an uncertain voice, calling her by name. But such a simple address surprised the girl. Apparently, he had never spoken like that before. Yoo-jun was immediately horrified, realizing that he had made a mistake and did not know how to fix it. He tried calling her Nuna, but calling her sister made things worse, and Soyeon frowned. And then the guy realized how badly he was in trouble, and the cherished thought flashed through his head. Game over. According to Han Song-ah, Yoo-jun got along well with the sorceress, and she even liked him. So the guy assumed that they didn't break up because of a fight, and according to the mentor, the head of the clan contributed to their separation, but he acted unilaterally. To ask about this, I had to lie that he had lost some of his memory due to stress, and the teacher recommended going to a doctor, but the guy refused. Anyway, there was only laxative and cough syrup there, and without a label. According to the mentor, Yoo-jun was on good terms with Soyeon, so now the guy was completely confused. Since things had reached the point of embarrassment, he simply decided to act in his own way and immediately got down to business, asking the sorceress about the purpose of her arrival. Soyeon nodded and raised her hand to cast a spell. She created beautiful snowflakes and stated that she wanted to hone her mastery of the new power. The area was great for training because it was remote and cold. Apparently, to get to the colder part of the mountains, a guide was needed. Yoo-jo immediately refused, citing her busy schedule. And then Yoo-jun volunteered to help. The sister was surprised because her brother knew little about the mountain, and wolves had recently bitten him there. But Yoo-jun insisted that he knew the coldest place in the mountains because he had read a lot. The sister didn't object. She wasn't going to waste time on it anyway. The boy asked teacher Han to go with them, and she agreed. So Yeon, who was wearing a light cape and an open top, volunteered to go straight away. Yoo-jun agreed, but first he wanted to show her something. A small gift. The gift sat in the closet with its mouth tied and was completely shivering with cold. For a moment, Soyeon looked at him as if he were worthless. So the missing one has been found, the heiress of the magic tower said affectionately. She promised to take him back to the tower, and the prisoner began to beg to save him from such a fate. It was better to die. The departure to the mountains was postponed until the morning of the next day. Walking through the mountains at night, where there were lots of monsters, was not the best idea. One day would not solve anything. Yoo-jun also didn't waste any time and decided to prepare himself by leafing through the book of the God of War. He was also led to Mount Sorak by a task that could be completed there under the pretext of accompanying the sorceress. The treacherous ice ghosts would accept him as their friend if he had the correct mark on him. The ghost itself was nothing special, but it was absolutely necessary for the next task. Among the various events happening in this world, there were some that could lead to a catastrophe if they were not stopped in time. And the tears of the snowfield are one of them. If the ice tiger spirit wasn't dealt with now, it would come down from the mountains and find its body, after which it would destroy several cities. Yoo-jun was going to deal with it now, while the tiger was still weak. The game also had a system called the challenge task, which gave extra points for each achievement. This allowed him to quickly accumulate points, after which Yoo-jun hoped to increase his book proficiency level again. The next morning they were ready to move out. The weather was freezing, so much so that their bones ached. Yoo-jun was also ready to set out, so they decided not to delay their departure. However, Soyeon didn't immediately understand why the guy had so many things with him. It was as if he was going on an expedition to the North Pole. Without going into long explanations, the guy promised to tell everything on the spot. While they were walking along a forest path, a snowstorm began, so strong that it completely blocked their view. With such an overview, Soyeon began to worry about being able to protect her guide. She shouted over the wind that they should stay closer together, but the wolves were already there. However, before Soyeon could do anything, Yoo-jun put the dogs to bed. Having let go of the furry ones, the guy apologized for not hearing her, and he asked to repeat it. As soon as the wolves fell asleep, the storm immediately died down. The girl immediately realized that she had worried about this guy in vain. But at the noise of the fight, sensing strangers, other monsters came out of the forest. As soon as the first of them appeared in the clearing, he immediately received a hole in his body. So Yeon's rays of goodness pierced them through, 2 or 3 in a row. But this is not the end. said the silver-haired sorceress. Enraged by the sudden attack, the entire tribe of frost ogres fled from the forest. Then the sorceress gathered a huge magic circle behind her back, and it burst into flames like napalm. Nothing warmed the morning like a raging flame. The monsters tried to escape, but Soyeon's hand flamethrower incinerated them all. This sorceress is still incredible, thought Yoojun, as he warmed his hands by the fire. Even at the very beginning of the game, she was so incredibly strong that it could be considered cheating. But not all monsters were affected by fire in the same way. There were also those who were not afraid. A pack of wolves intended to have dinner with a weak-looking man. The more people fought, the more monsters came running here from all around. A couple of wolves decided to jump on Soyeon while she was distracted. But at that very moment, Yoojun heroically dealt with them and protected the beauty. The old wolf with a scar on his face grinned angrily that had befallen them. Their number grew, and then Yoojun promised to deal with the dogs. At this time, Soyeon had to finish off the remaining goblins. With his fists of fiery force, the guy quickly dealt with the leader. But by the time he had dealt with it, Soyeon had already turned the entire clearing into a terrifying ashes and sat down to rest on a stone. Just like in the game, this girl always made a mess of the battlefield. While they were resting, the guy gave her a bottle of potion to restore her strength. Soyeon was surprised by such care and noted that he had changed a lot, which made the guy shudder, deciding that he had made a mistake again. In the past, he followed her around calling her little sister, but now he has become insolent. She praised him for not only handling the burden, but also taking care of her. But Yoojun, again, didn't understand what she was talking about. In the past, they often discussed each other's life situations. Soyeon reminded him with surprise. The boy cried constantly because he couldn't live up to his father's expectations. Now Yoojun understood. The Holy Sword Clan and the Magic Tower were similar to each other, but with a slight difference. The successor position in the tower was given to the strongest among all. Absolutely anyone could try to take this position. So Soyeon was under tremendous pressure due to her father being the current head of the tower. So she and Yoojun were in a similar position. However, the guy still couldn't know exactly what they were talking about, and decided to change the subject for now. Once they had rested, he suggested moving on immediately, and Soyeon was surprised by such haste. There was no point in lingering here, since they were almost there, the guide said and smiled, after which he offered to show her the way. So Yeon looked at his back and thought, before, they said about this guy that he had no talent at all. But the way he dealt with the wolves said something completely different. When they reached the place, Yoojun told her that they had arrived. Nothing seemed to have changed. The same forest and snowdrifts all around. But when the snowstorm died down a bit, Soyeon saw a wall of ice in front of her. Surprised, she asked what this place was, since she didn't know about it. There was something inside that didn't feel human. So she decided to check. As always, Soyeon had a good sense. She used detection magic and found the ice spirits without any difficulty. The sorceress decided that they were monsters, but the guy immediately corrected her. They entered the cave, and at the entrance they were met by strange creatures that could speak. The spirits began to argue whether people were friends or enemies. This discouraged the girl even more, because if they weren't monsters in front of them, then who were they? The boy explained that they were fairies of some sort and extended his hand with a snow mark to the spirits. Having smelled her, the ghost took him for their friend, as the system promised. Ice spirits were engaged in sending the souls of the dead to the afterlife on Mount Sorak. And then Yoojun asked them what they were doing here. The spirits complained to him that their house had been taken over and strange creatures had come and killed their friend, and that they were also scary and evil. Their friend had died and now could not enter the spirit world, the fairy ghost told him. But these spirits were somehow different from the fairies Soyeon knew, so she treated them with suspicion. The spirits told their friend that an evil grudge was lurking in the cave, that it was growing angrier every day, and that it needed to be urgently sent to the next world. Yoojun offered his help, and the spirits said that they needed the body of a snow tiger because all souls are attached to their bodies, so they could subdue and purify. Since he simply needed to subdue him, Yoojun immediately took out from an invisible pocket the carcass of a huge tiger, which he had bought at auction. So Yeon was quite surprised, but now she realized that her earlier wariness was not in vain. The guy was obviously using her to help the fairies, because there were too many coincidences. The guy was embarrassed and started making excuses, but it was hard to say that he had simply taken the tiger carcass with him, just in case. He asked her to wait, because in the end, she would understand everything, and the girl agreed to go further. As they approached the evil spirit's cave, the others became nervous, but still moved forward, because they had to subdue him. The situation looked even worse than Yoojun had imagined. The sorceress already understood that the impudent man was simply counting on her support, And the guy nodded and replied that this was the best place to accumulate magical power. Even though she didn't want to, she was forced to admit that he was right. Now Soyeon understood why she was brought to this place. Just the howling of the evil spirit gave her goosebumps. The local magical power caused a terrible chill, so it was perfect for training. She was ready to go deeper, but the guy said that first, they had to take something. Since direct confrontation was impossible, they had to take certain measures. The hero's bag contained many potions, most of which he had prepared himself, under the guidance of the physician Ju Wan. He gave one of them to Soyeon, the same one she took when she fought the monsters. Besides this, the guy had other scrolls with him. So Yeon thought again. The amount of magical power inside her was growing. Besides, the potion that the guy gave her was also working. At first she thought he had simply become stronger in martial arts. But now she realized that the guy had definitely grown up. The spirit of the slain monster's malice radiated enormous power, which struck like lightning from the sharp spike on its back. The ghost, baring his toothy jaws, came out to meet the impudent little people. He walked slowly, and Soyeon already thought that they simply had not been noticed. But Yoojun prepared a magic circle under his feet. This circle was supposed to enhance the sorceress's magic, and she was again surprised by its preparation. Yoojun even brought along a magic circle of manifestation, which allowed him to materialize ghost-type monsters. Even without the price, it was hard to come by, and the boy smiled and explained that if the tiger had been alive, they wouldn't have had to prepare so much. An evil spirit is a completely different story. So the guy decided to use the scroll right away. At that very moment, the spell worked, and the tiger fell under its influence. Gradually, the outlines of the spirit became more and more obvious. As soon as he gained material form, Soyeon cast a chain spell. Several thick steel chains were torn from her hands at once. At the end of each chain was a dagger that pierced the ghost. Almost immediately, Soyeon felt that she would not be able to keep the tiger under control for long. Meanwhile, Yoojun was preparing a spell, and the circle under his feet filled with light again. Magic circle of magic enhancement combined with the skill of heaven's destruction. The fiery tornado of his ability engulfed the entire evil spirit. The tiger, held tightly by the sorceress's chains, could not escape. However, this was not enough to overcome him, and the sorceress felt that the spirit would now break out. His eyes burned with malice. The beast inspired terror with its very appearance. He growled so loudly that their ears were blocked by his roar. The chains began to break, and the heroes themselves could barely stand on their feet. As soon as the spirit was freed, it leaped towards Soyeon and struck with its paw, but she managed to react. Yoojun felt the same way. Every attack from this monster was fatal, even if he's just touched while the spirit is dealing with Soyeon. The sorceress pinned the monster down with a gravity-enhancing spell. He almost used his breath, but Yoojun managed to land a punch to his jaw and interrupted the ability. Before the spirit could repay him, Soyeon managed to move the boy closer to her. The tiger recovered very quickly from the attack, and the sorceress was nervous, but Yoojun told her that everything was under control. He just had to hit harder, and thanks to the system, he combined the two striking skills again. But one such strike was clearly not enough, and the guy decided to add a spinning shot. This one already worked well, and the tigers flew off to polish the floor. Once they had immobilized him again, Soyeon could burn the tiger with napalm again. The spirit felt unwell and like a turkey at Christmas. But even after such treatment, beaten and with scorched skin, he still did not give up. So Yeon suggested retreating, and Yoojun agreed with her. Although it might seem like their actions had no effect, this was not the case. The snow tiger was not a real beast. It was just a spirit, the boy said. The tiger controlled the souls of other creatures and directed them to the right world. He could also use this ability in battle. No matter the damage, he could quickly recover by absorbing the souls near him. So Yeon still didn't understand how to defeat him, and then the guy told her to take a closer look. They battered him quite badly, but the tiger could not heal himself. Instead, he used souls to attack, and the fight entered the second phase. All sorts of restless dead immediately began to emerge from the walls of the cave. They surrounded the couple and began to giggle maliciously. So Yeon grimaced in disgust. This wasn't how she'd imagined their first date, where instead of going to a restaurant, they'd have to deal with the undead. Yoojun explained to her that the battle had entered its second phase. The tiger had summoned all the souls on Mount Sorak to attack them. In previous playthroughs, the guy had already observed the nightmare that the evil spirit would create if he wasn't stopped now. He would destroy hunters, ordinary people, and then turn their souls into ghosts. This way, his army will constantly grow, and this will provoke a real disaster. So Yeon immediately threw a fireball at them to somehow slow down the spirits. One shot was followed by dozens more, but there were too many enemies. This could hardly be called normal, so the sorceress was nervous. But again, the guy told her that he was ready for this. He should have, hurry, the sorceress grumbled again. And then she saw in his hands an ultra-powerful holy scroll against the undead. The boy unfolded it with a satisfied look, not at all afraid of the nearby spirits. He spread his hands out to the side as if in prayer, and the cave filled with soft light. All the spirits immediately turned into dirty spots and spread throughout the cave like ink. The Sphere of Light was a precious scroll that her father personally gave to the head of the Holy Sword clan, and Soyeon was amazed that it ended up in the boy's hands. He confessed to the theft without a twinge of conscience, and even grinned smugly. It was the best equipment in the world, said the guy, and again spread his hands dreamily. I wish I could always win like this. So Yeon was so taken aback that she didn't know what to say in response. The snow tiger was essentially an undead creature once it turned into a demon, and divine magic like the Sphere of Light was like poison to him. Until the evil spirit recovered from the blow, Yoojun decided to finish him off. Now his time has come, said the boy, and jumped straight towards the spirit with a fiery fist. The flame, enhanced by all sorts of bonuses and cheats, turned into a dragon and devoured the tiger. A huge explosion rang out in the cramped cave, and Soyeon covered her face. And when I opened it again, I saw that the evil spirit had already been defeated. Then the ice ghosts came onto the stage and said that they would do the rest themselves. The girl asked the round ones in surprise what they were talking about. To bring a tiger into the spirit world, it was necessary to undergo a purification ritual. And the ghosts knew how to do this. They began to wave their paws and call on the tigers to return to them. Gradually, their magic engulfed the entire body of the evil spirit. When the ritual was completed, they almost burst into tears, seeing that their friend had returned. The tiger woke up and spoke. He was very surprised by what was happening. When he was called to the spirit world, he did not immediately understand what the ice ghosts were talking about. The guy congratulated the striped mattress on coming to its senses. The tiger bared his teeth when he saw the strangers, but the boy quickly explained what had happened and that he owed them for bringing him back to normal. They did all this at the request of the ice spirits, the guy said, taking out the bag. He returned the tiger's body, which he accidentally discovered at an auction. And so the tiger finally realized that he had actually been dead for a long time. Yoojun asked him how this happened, because it would not have been so easy for a powerful spirit to fall into the hands of people. The invaders in black armor captured his child. There were not many of them, but they were strong. Tiger really wanted to get his kitten back, but ended up losing consciousness due to the wounds he received. He might not remember everything, but he knew he'd managed to save his baby and hide him behind the ice wall. During the game, the tiger had been attacked by treasure hunters, and now was not the time to deal with them. Before the tiger went to the spirit world, he asked them for a favor. He asked to avenge him against those who had vilely attacked him. These were very dangerous people who would do anything to achieve their goals, said the tiger. Although the guy shouldn't have done this, he promised to fulfill the request. But he would soon meet these scoundrels anyway. But that's not all the request. In addition, the tiger asked them to look after the baby. The guy was surprised that the beast trusted him, because in essence, he was the same person. But the tigers could trust him because he brought his body here, and he also helped the ice spirits and thus saved him. Although, to do this, I had to beat the spirit. The boy appreciated the level of trust, but again warned that he was too weak to protect the baby. Then the tiger promised to help him with this in exchange for fulfilling the request, and this was exactly what Yoojun was waiting for. A light force, similar to a blue star, entered his body. The system immediately informed him that he had received the energy the tiger had accumulated throughout his life, and it also acquired new skills and traits. He no longer needed warmth. So Yeon also felt that his magical energy had increased sharply, and the air around the guy had become cool. The time has come, said the tiger, and began to slowly disappear. For the spirits that constantly appear and disappear, death was a trifle. However, getting used to the separations was not easy, the tiger said. So the guy realized that the striped one had already been to the spirit world. Yoojun asked the tiger to stay behind to show him how he would find his baby, since they had made a deal. It was stupid and reckless, but the tigers agreed to wait and disappear. The ice spirits asked the guy if he was really going to the spirit world later. It was impossible to get there in a living body, but they also had a gift for the hero, and they granted him the ability to enter the spirit world and back, which also strengthened his connection with other spirits. It didn't have any effect right away, but it could come in handy in the future. After this, the ghost went away after the tiger to guide him on his way to the spirit world. So Yeon asked if that was all, but the guy replied that it wasn't yet. The guy walked towards the ice wall, although it looked solid. As soon as he touched her, a passage opened there. Inside lay a small, wounded tiger cub, barely breathing and looking bad. First, the baby needed to be cured before it was too late. The wound looked bad, but with the help of his knowledge of herbs, the boy managed to treat it correctly, after which he gave the baby water with a healing decoction. So Yan was amazed again by his skill. It was as if the guy had become a different person. Yujun had kept this potion in case he himself was seriously injured, so its effectiveness was quite high. It was simply astonishing that anyone would dare to touch such a small child. Most likely, they were treasure hunters who searched dungeons all over the world and plundered the dwellings of spirits. They will soon cause another incident that will lead to the first big event. Ironically, it would be better to let them cause trouble. Stopping the villains was practically impossible, and if you did, the consequences were unknown. So now, the guy had a mountain of work. Once he had resolved his issues, the sorceress asked him to take care of her request as well. But the guy pointed out to her the cold of this cave. Over the years that the ice tiger had lived here, the walls had accumulated his power. Of course, the sorceress felt the power, but someone had to guard her while she collected the energy. And also, pay for the fact that she was forced to work for free. The guy explained that he had the opportunity to help her, even while he was taking care of the baby. But the girl no longer heard him. She thought only of the little red tongue that he stuck out contentedly when he was given a drink. Yujun suddenly realized that no one was paying attention to him at all. Later, they went together, and the guy covered Soyeon while she did her business. She promised to finish in 3 days, and the hero did not object. Like the Holy Sword clan, the wizards also had their own breathing techniques that they used to accumulate strength. And one of the reasons why Soyeon was chosen as the successor is precisely because she is extremely skilled in using this technique. So Yeon herself hid in a dense protective onion, and the guy was amazed at such precaution. As soon as she withdrew into herself, Yujun decided to check his statistics over a long period of time. His skills had grown greatly. Magic power has increased by 1 level. If the speed is maintained, it will reach the 2nd rank before Yuteron returns. It was not bad, although there was still room for improvement, because the Path of Heroes is a game with a rapid increase in power. Especially from the middle section, nightmarish monsters begin to appear, for which even the 1st rank is not enough. But now the guy had a reliable ally, who was still sleeping curled up in his arms. After all this, he thought he would rest, because the day had been very difficult. However, Walking Dead appeared behind him. Luckily, he was able to deal with them and successfully waited for Soyeon, although he really wanted to sleep. As she said, she finished it in 3 days, although there was quite a lot of mana here. So Yeon thanked him for his help, as it allowed her to focus on absorbing mana. Seeing how many monster bodies were lying around, she realized that the guy had done a good job too. Although she was no match, he replied, and asked the girl how she felt. So Yeon replied that she felt well refreshed, and a noticeable coldness emanated from her body. Yujun had no doubt that the powerful sorceress had become even more terrifying during this time. Even though she spoke about it so calmly, the tiger cub in his arms let out a long yawn. In the hands of his new guardian, he felt much better and looked good. Then the cat woke up and jumped out of the guy's arms. Only his striped tail flashed. The girl thought it was because of her, because she came too close. But the baby must have simply sensed the presence of its parent. And then he burst into tears, realizing that he was no longer there. Eventually, the robber's actions took a toll on his psyche. The boy explained to the child that his parent was already in the spirit world, and he was left to look after him. The kitten began to meow pitifully again, as if he understood what was being said. Yujun said that he knew where they were, and would help the tiger cub meet its parent, after which he invited the kitten to go with him and began to wait. The tiger cub thought and immediately jumped into the boy's arms, clinging to him, his whole body trembling. It wasn't surprising since his family was dead, but it was difficult for Soyeon to understand the feelings of sadness over the death of a relative. In the Holy Sword family, fratricide was allowed on the path to leadership of the clan. The Magic Tower was also a place where family ties meant nothing. So Yujun himself understood the girl's cold detachment. Then the guy told her that, in general, it is sad when someone in the family dies. Here, Yujun thought, the baby in his arms and his body had a very strange fate. At sunset, they returned to the Holy Sword clan. Fortunately, the weather was calm. All the household members were delighted to see the air safe and sound. The boy was surprised that Sungmin and the teacher had been waiting for him all this time. But then they noticed that their master had suddenly gained weight during this time. Then the guy showed them what was wrong and said that his belly was temporary. This cuteness immediately knocked Han Sung-ah out of action. But the servant thought that his master had taken up poaching. He scolded him for such unworthy behavior, even though the tiger was rare to see. Meanwhile, So-yeon provided first aid to Master Han as best she could. Yoo-jun stopped listening to them all. He wanted to quickly go to his chambers and rest. Wanting to take better care of the cute baby, So-yeon stayed with the clan for another 3 days. But the young heir was not able to rest. In the middle of the night, he was awakened by some noise. The little demon was nocturnal and simply went crazy, scratching the entire room. Yoo-jun called him a snow shadow, and thanks to the doctor's treatment, the tiger quickly returned to normal and began to show his animal size. As a spiritual being, he understood perfectly well what was being said to him, but he completely ignored it. And in general, he behaved like any decent cat. Here, the tiger cub suddenly became quiet and stared at the guy with burning eyes. Yoo-jun asked him what he was thinking, but he again ignored his guardian. After which, Yoo-jun received a heavy paw to the face. Even though the tiger cub was small, he was still very strong. There wasn't much difference between the spirit and the cat. The essence was the same, straight from hell. So the guy was already dreaming of being simply killed. Then, Sunmin knocked on the door and said that he had found the person the master needed. It was good news. Since the information was confirmed, the guy said he would be there. 3 gangster-looking men were knocking on someone's door despite it being late at night. This happened in Busan. Tired of knocking, they broke down the doors and entered, causing the owner of the house to shrink in horror. He shouted that their intrusion was illegal, and it became clear that debt collectors had come for him. But not ordinary ones, but with pliers and a soldering iron. The bandits didn't care about propriety, especially since the fugitive himself took the money from them and decided that he could escape. The unfortunate man declared that it was not his duty, but the bandits did not care, even if the debt was taken by the fugitive's father. They grabbed him by the hair and quickly explained how this world works. The moneylenders gave them money, thinking that the hunters would be able to quickly return it. But now, they just came to take their own back. The guy was a simple, low-level hunter and couldn't even enter the gate, much less work like that. Then they explained to him again in a clear manner that this was not the right solution to financial difficulties. Having lost a couple of teeth, the poor fellow fell silent and simply whined. They continued to educate him until one of the bandits told them to stop. This man spoke calmly and stated that the issue needed to be resolved and that it would be better for the guy to earn this money. But the poor guy didn't want to go through the gate so as not to end up like his father. Die at the gates or remain here as an invalid. The choice is small, said the leader of the moneylenders. At his signal, the healthy bandit immediately began to properly educate the unfortunate man. However, at the last moment, his hand hit someone's palm, as if it were a wall, and the bandit opened his mouth in amazement. A strange girl appeared out of nowhere, and he couldn't even move in her presence. The other bandits also didn't understand when she appeared, because they didn't even have time to hear the sound of footsteps. Then Yoo-jun came through the entrance and said that you can't just break into honest people's place. He was also a great connoisseur of manners. In ethical disputes, the one with the stronger fist always wins. The ghouls began to threateningly ask him who he was and why he was interfering. But Yoo-jun didn't even pay attention to the small fry. He wanted to pay the debt for the unfortunate guy and asked how much. Although the unfortunate father had borrowed 500 million, he was already credited with a debt of almost 3 billion. The head of the moneylenders reminded the poor fellow about interest, which is why one should always choose lenders wisely. Then Yoo-jun offered them 2 options. The first was to take 500 million and leave. The second was to leave on a stretcher and have to pay the hospital bills for a long time. And I recommended the first one, but received a decisive refusal in an extremely provocative and obscene manner. The moneylender threw a cigarette butt at him and declared that the system doesn't work that way, and the issue of interest is fundamental to their trade. He mumbled something else about correct counting, but the arithmetic lesson was interrupted by a lesson in good manners on how to behave with the heir of a great clan, played by Han Sung-ah. Disrespect for the master is punishable by death, she said, sending the leader to level the walls with his body. Here, the bandits realized that they had run into another organized group that was too tough for them. The leader felt unwell and dropped out of the negotiations for a good reason. Han Sung-ah then moved on to the next target, rightly assuming that he had been left as a deputy. She looked at him with such a piercing gaze, as if she wanted to pierce him on the spot. This made all the sphincters in the poor guy's body clench, and he suddenly started to swim. The last bandit escaped, and Yoo-jun ordered to follow and find their headquarters. Then take all the money and return it to the victims of the loan sharks. Turning to the victim, whose name was Hyun-suk, the heir asked him how he was. Yoo-jun admitted that this guy's father saved him once, and this is a kind of debt repayment. That's why Yoo-jun came here, even though things didn't turn out as he expected. The heir asked Hyun-suk where his father was, but he could not say anything about it. The boy was worried that his savior would get into trouble. but the heir explained that he had already sent a reliable person to resolve all the issues. Hyun-suk then said that he would be happy to repay the debt, although Yoo-jun did not ask for anything in return. The victim still handed Yoo-jun the necklace his father had given him and said that it would be better if he kept it. This was exactly what Yoo-jun was aiming for, so he happily accepted the quest item. After returning to the clan, Han Song-ah reported that she had cleared out all the trash that was bothering people. There was no one worthwhile among them. The mentor was disappointed, as he had wanted to test his new magical skills, but had never gotten around to it. The heir consoled her that the opportunity would present itself soon. Then she noticed a new medallion on his neck that she had not seen before. Although it looked like that, it was actually sealing magic. With the help of Soyeon, who still hadn't returned to the tower, they studied the item. She frowned, realizing that she was being used again, and completely for free. And she warned that next time, he should come to the tower for help. At these words, the guy remembered that very event. To unravel the power and purpose of the item, its seal had to be broken, and Soyeon asked to wait. When she did this, the medallion began to glow brightly with a golden light. Han Song-ah let out a surprised cry when she realized what it was. The medallion turned into a monocle, which helps the emperor keep an eye on people. This thing served as an observer's eye. It was only the first artifact, but Yoo-jun smiled greedily at the fact that he got it so easily. There were special items along the hero's journey. Artifacts were distinguished by the fact that after their use, their effects could not be undone. They were difficult to obtain and extremely rare, with some requiring special conditions to use. Others would disappear as soon as you used them. One of which was used by Shin Woo-hyun when he was hunting for the heir in the labyrinth. And the third type, which belong to one user and are available all the time. The monocle was just such a thing, and Yoo-jun immediately used it, after which I decided to immediately check whether the device was working correctly. The system immediately showed him the status of Soyeon, the owner of a superb ranked magical bathhouse, a magical genius, with the blessing of mana. She was insanely strong, even now at the beginning of the game. Yoo-jun realized that it was better not to pull this tiger's whiskers. He had never seen Soyeon's status in the game before, and he realized that the sorceress would soon become a real monster. So if he can't prevent the magic tower from falling, the game could quickly end. Once again, everything came down to the fact that he was not strong enough to prevent all the troubles in the world and survive. For the most part, Yoo-jun has been able to follow the game's plot so far. But some events have introduced their own variables. Even new information emerged, such as that he and Soyeon were engaged. He had only one way left: to find traces of the gods and open a system of achievements in that place. This meant that soon, Yumun Haku would be called upon by his heir, he understood. And just at that time, the maid informed him that the chief was calling him. The guy smiled and set off on an adventure like a true hero.